The magical door at midnight. Mia woke to a tiny knock, tap, tap, just when the clock whispered 12. She sat up in her cozy bed and blinked at the floor. There, tucked under the quilt and near her slippers, was a little wooden door no taller than her favorite storybook. It shimmered with a soft golden light and hummed like a lullaby. Mia smiled with the slow excitement of someone who knows a secret might be kind. She slipped on her fuzzy socks and whispered, "Hello." When the little door opened, a small head peeked out, Toby the turtle, eyes bright like green marbles, and a tiny lantern mouse with a glowing lamp. They bowed as if greeting a long-lost friend. "Would you like to visit the midnight market?" Toby asked in a voice that sounded like slow giggles. Mia's heart felt like a fluffy balloon. She nodded, tugging the quilt around her shoulders like a cape. The doorway smelled faintly of honey and the sea. Stepping through, Mia found a path of twinkling stones leading into a gentle night garden. Above, the crescent moon tilted like a friendly smile and sprinkled moonbeams that felt like soft ribbons. A star carpet waited, pillows of dandelion fluff tucked at its corners. Mia climbed aboard with one careful hop. Toby crawled beside her, tiny feet tapping. The lantern mouse lit the way. The path hummed under them, and Mia felt safe and brave in a new quiet world. They drifted toward the midnight market, where tents glowed like jellyfish and stalls sold music in jars. Friendly creatures strolled with pockets full of giggles. A baker sold warm cinnamon clouds, a painter sold pictures that hummed, and a seamstress stitched tiny dreams into mitten-sized pockets. Mia smelled sugar and willow smoke. Children of the night owl babies with sleepy eyes clapped and waved as the star carpet floated over the smiling crowd. Everything sparkled kindly. At the moonlight stall, Mia met the crescent moon's own helper, who offered small moonbeams bundled like ribbons. "Take one to share a smile," the helper whispered. Mia unwrapped a silver ribbon and felt it giggle in her hand. She looped a moonbeam into her hair and it warmed her like a soft blanket. The lantern mouse's whiskers twitched. Toby's shell glowed brighter. Mia promised to use the moonbeam to help anyone who looked a little dim. Soon they sailed on a fluffy dandelion float through a stream of giggling clouds. Puffy cloud kites waved hello as they passed. Fireflies played hide-and-seek among the petals of the sky, and each tiny light left a soft print as if someone had stamped glow on the air. Mia and Toby reached out to touch the prints, and each touch made a gentle bell sound. They laughed until their chests felt like soft springs of joy. In a shadowed nook by a willow stall, they found a little grumpy shadow who had lost its smile. It shuffled and sighed like a lost hat. The shadow was soft and small, but hollow where cheer should be. Other visitors passed carefully, not knowing how to help. Mia knelt and touched the shadow's hand. She unwrapped her moonbeam ribbon and tied it into a tiny bow. The moonbeams tickled, and the shadow tried a smile. It trembled, then bubbled into a bright grin. The newly smiling shadow joined a small parade led by sleepy owls tapping leaf drums. Toby marched with a tiny leaf drum too, his shell gleaming like polished green glass. Mia clapped in time and stomped one soft slipper. Beat, beat, hush, and the crowd hummed along. The parade tucked the happy shadow into a pocket of laughter, and the market swelled with giggles like warm soup. Mia felt proud and sleepy in a comfortable, helpful way. The moon whispered that dawn would be near and that star carpets prefer to rest before morning birds wake. Mia's heart gave a little skip. She didn't want the night to end, but she knew home waited too. The moon handed Mia a small bell that sounded like a giggle and a paper map woven from stardust. "For kind footsteps and brave pockets," the moon said with a wink. Mia tucked the gifts safely into her pajamas pocket. On the way back, the market hummed a slow lullaby. People yawned and tents lowered like sleepy heads. The star carpet drifted through the twinkling stone path toward the tiny door beneath Mia's bed. The lantern mouse curled into a nap on Mia's shoulder, and Toby yawned a turtle-sized yawn that sounded like a tiny tide. Mia pressed the little bell once. It chimed with a soft giggle that seemed to tuck the world into a blanket. Back in her bedroom, the tiny door closed with a kissing click and left a sprinkle of moon dust on Mia's pillow. She climbed under the quilt, the star map warm in her pocket and the giggling bell tucked by her hand. Toby curled up like a small green pebble on the quilt edge, and the lantern mouse found a corner of the sock drawer to keep watch. Outside the window, the sky blushed faintly as dawn yawned, but the room stayed cozy and bright with moon crumbs. Mia hugged her new map and bell and whispered thank you to the small night friends. She promised to return when the door sang again. The lantern mouse squeaked a tiny good night, and Toby blinked slow, turtle-sure. Mia closed her eyes and felt the moonbeam ribbon like a warm hug. In dreams, she floated back to the market where she helped others and laughed with clouds. The house kept its secret, and the little door waited, patient as sleep. Outside, the crescent moon dipped behind cottony clouds and the sky grew paler, but the tiny door at the foot of Mia's bed kept a faint twinkle like a secret smile. As Mia's breathing softened into sleep, a tiny knock, tap, tap, no louder than a kitten's paw, sounded once more and then faded. The night had been full of new friends, small brave moments, and shiny little gifts of kindness. Mia slept, dreaming of moonbeams, sure that adventures would come back again. Finn and the Hidden Treasure Chest. Finn woke with a wiggle and a tickle in his toes. Outside his window, the garden whispered, "Adventure?" He put on his red raincoat, stitched with a little pocket for surprises. Luna the stripy cat twined around his ankles, ringing her tiny bell like a cheerful bell boat. Together, they tiptoed through grass that felt like soft hair underfoot. The garden smelled of lemon and dirt and something sparkly. On the old stone path, tucked under a leaf, Finn found a crinkly paper with a bold dotted line and a smiling X. The crinkly paper was the treasure map. Big arrows looked like ticklish worms and a happy X winked in the corner. Finn and Luna hopped and hummed as they followed the dotted line. The map said first, "Find the rainbow rock who giggles when tickled." They tiptoed to a patch of stones, and there it was, a bright, sparkly stone with rainbow stripes, grinning like it had a secret. Finn patted it softly. The rock giggled, a tiny bell sound, and a little starseed popped out and twinkled in Finn's palm. The map rustled like a giggle and pointed to singing flowers next. Finn and Luna walked past a puddle that mirrored hopping clouds. 3 singing flowers swayed and hummed a gentle tune, lal-alum, lal-alum. Their petals smiled like sleepy faces. Finn clapped a little rhythm and Luna tapped a soft paw. The flowers rewarded them with a tiny petal that smelled of vanilla and played a bell note when waved. Finn tucked the petal into his coat pocket, feeling its warmth like a friendly hello. Next, the dotted line hopped toward a slow-footed friend. A slow snail in a shiny brown shell was making a ladder of dewdrops across the path. "Hello," said Finn softly, because snails liked gentle greetings. Luna leaned in, whisker tickling the snail's shell. The snail blinked slow and wise and slid aside to show a tiny shell-shaped key tied with a bit of grass. "For a small lock when you find it," the snail hummed in snail voice. Finn thanked him and gently tied the key to his shoelace. The map climbed on into the sky, so Finn looked up. A puffy cloud bridge arced overhead like a white, bouncy slide. The map's arrow pointed there, and Finn wondered if feet could bounce on clouds. Luna mewed as if to say, "Let's try." Finn took a breath, stepped up the low cloud steps by a friendly oak, and found the cloud was springy and warm like a pillow that giggled. Luna pranced beside him, little paws leaving soft cloud prints that floated for a wink and then disappeared. Halfway across the cloud bridge, the dotted line curled around a twinkling moon puddle and a small wooden sign that read, "Almost there." The map then asked a tiny riddle. What shines without a candle, sleeps in a seed, and sings without words? Finn thought of the starseed in his palm and the singing flowers. Luna purred and tapped the petal in Finn's pocket. They smiled together and whispered, "Friendship and stories and star seeds." The map shivered with delight and led them on. Down from the clouds they floated, as if the garden had opened a soft door. The map's dotted line zigzagged toward an old willow tree that leaned like a listening friend. At the willow's roots, shadows curled like sleepy cats. Finn peeked and found a tiny, star-shaped lock fixed into a knot of rootwood. It was small and kind. He took the little snail key from his shoelace, turned it carefully, and heard a tiny click that sounded like a promise. Luna chimed her bell in celebration. The promise click made the ground ripple a little, and a secret hollow in the roots opened to reveal a petite wooden treasure chest with little dents like smiles. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and soil. Finn and Luna knelt together. Finn lifted the lid. Inside, instead of gold coins, there were 3 wrapped giggles, soft, shimmering ribbons that made you snort when you touched them, 1 warm chocolate cookie that smelled like home, and a tiny bag labeled star seeds. A friendly note said, "Share this treasure." Finn held a wrapped giggle and it burst into a tiny hiccup of laughter that made Luna flip her tail. The giggles made sleepy butterflies dance above the chest. Finn broke the chocolate cookie in half and shared it with Luna, crumbs cozy in the willow roots. He sprinkled 3 star seeds into a shallow cup of rainwater. Each seed glowed, dipped, and then sprouted a whisper of nightlight that shimmered like baby stars. The note's last line read, "A treasure shared is a treasure doubled." They decided the best place for star seeds was on the windowsill where bedtime stories live. Finn and Luna carried the tiny lights back through the garden, the singing flowers waving them goodbye, and the slow snail bowing a slow shell bow. The rainbow rock chimed a last giggle as they passed. Finn placed the tiny glowing sprouts on the sill and tucked the crinkly map beneath his pillow so its dotted line could dream too. Luna curled into a purr ball that hummed like a lullaby. At the window, the little stars from the seeds blinked awake and told Finn tiny bedtime tales about the garden, the snail's slow journey, and the flowers' lullaby. Finn listened with his chin on his hands. Luna's bell hummed softly as she slept. Outside, the moon stitched silver thread across the clouds and stitched a tiny crown of light above Finn's head. He felt the treasure all warm and sparkly in his chest. the cookie crumbs, the giggles, the glow, and the map that would always be ready for another day. Finn tucked himself and Luna into a blanket nest. He whispered to Luna the secret of the map. Treasure is for sharing, and sharing makes it bigger. Luna purred like a soft drum in answer. Finn placed the crinkly map back under his pillow, careful and happy, and the little star seeds blinked once more like sleepy eyes. The garden hummed softly, and the willow rustled a happy, sleepy song. Finn's breaths grew slow and even, each one a tiny treasure of its own. In the middle of the night, when stars were tiptoeing through the sky, Finn dreamed a bright dream. In his dream, the garden came to tea, and the treasure chest opened wide to share stories from all its corners, giggles, cookies, and star seeds that grew into tiny nightlights. Luna twirled in Finn's dream like a ribbon of moonlight. The crinkly map danced and drew new dotted lines, promising that tomorrow would hold another small, sparkling adventure. When morning peeled back the curtains, Finn woke with a tiny grin and a promise in his pocket to play, share, and find more small treasures with Luna. He left the map for later and gave Luna a morning scratch that made her purr like a small motor. The garden felt proud, wearing a dew sparkle like a tiny crown. Finn waved to the rainbow rock, who winked, and the singing flowers hummed a bright hello. They had all the treasure they needed, soft, silly, and shared. The Enchanted Forest Picnic. Lily woke up with a giggle. Today was picnic day. She tucked a little picnic basket under her arm, wrapped a rainbow blanket around it, and slipped the magic pebble into her pocket like a secret. The pebble felt warm and hummed a tiny happy song only Lily could hear. She put on her red rain boots, waved goodbye to her cozy house, and skipped off toward the enchanted forest where leaves whispered hello and sunlight made polka dots on the path. Near a cluster of bluebells, Benny the bunny popped out with a cheerful hop. "Hello, Lily," Benny said, twitching his long ears and showing his tiny blue bow. He loved picnics almost as much as carrots. Lily laughed and sat down to rest. Together, they unrolled the rainbow blanket under a friendly oak. Benny offered a crunchy carrot, and Lily showed him the pebble. The pebble gave a tiny happy trill, and Benny clapped his paws in delight. Above them, Oliver the owl fluttered down from a low branch with a soft hoot. He adjusted his little spectacles and peered at the picnic. "A perfect spot for songs," he said. Soon Miri, the mole, popped up from a nearby molehill with a napkin and a tiny spoon for the berry jam jar. Everyone introduced themselves in merry whispers. The pebble hummed a tune, and the leaves shivered like clapping hands. The forest felt very pleased to have new friends gathered on its floor. Just then, the ground gave a gentle rumble, and Maple the talking tree leaned close, her leaves rustling like 1,000 tiny bells. "Welcome, little ones," she rumbled in a kind voice. "This is my favorite clearing. Share your kindness and it will shine back." The animals smiled. Lily placed the magic pebble in the center of the blanket. The pebble shivered and sent out tiny sparkles that hopped like fireflies. Everyone felt a little braver and very much loved. They opened the picnic basket together. Sandwiches with crunchy lettuce, a jar of sweet berry jam, tiny muffins, and carrot sticks spilled onto the blanket. Everyone took turns passing plates and saying what they liked best. The pebble hummed softly each time someone shared. Lily spread jam on a muffin for Benny, and Benny nudged a carrot to Miri. Little songs sprang up. Oliver tapped a wing to keep the beat, and even the leaves seemed to sway along with their gentle music. A soft drizzle began, like someone sprinkling glitter from the sky. Rosie the fox arrived with a bright leaf umbrella and her bushy tail wrapped like a cozy scarf. "Rain makes picnics magical," she said with a grin. They all huddled close, sharing the umbrella and passing tiny bites. The pebble hummed louder when a crumb was shared or a kind word said. The raindrops turned into little twinkling beads when they touched the pebble, making a gentle tinkling song that made everyone giggle. Suddenly the pebble hopped. It rolled toward a quiet puddle and shone so brightly the puddle glimmered. Then a tiny rainbow bridge rose across the water like a smiling ribbon. One by one, the friends crossed on tiptoe. Benny bounced, Miri waddled carefully, Oliver glided, Rosie trotted with a proud prance, and Lily held hands with them all. Laughter filled the air. The pebble sang a new, sparkly tune of friendship that made every step feel light and brave. When they reached the other side, a little bunny family waved hello, and a chorus of frogs hummed along to the pebble's tune. The animals shared songs and tiny dances. Maple's leaves clapped slowly like a gentle drum. Night began to tiptoe closer, sprinkling faint stars through the tree branches. The lantern was lit and cast warm, dancing light. Everyone snuggled on the rainbow blanket and listened to the pebble's lullaby, feeling safe and full of the day's tiny wonders. Before they packed up, Maple lowered a leaf and whispered, "Kindness grows here with you." Lily tucked the pebble back into her pocket, promising to remember the songs and sharing. They folded the rainbow blanket, closed the picnic basket, and carried away empty plates and happy hearts. Each friend helped tidy a little corner of the clearing so other forest visitors could find the place tidy and bright. The pebble hummed a tiny, proud note that sounded like a goodbye promise to return. Lily walked home by starlight, her red boots tapping soft beats on the path. The pebble hummed a sleep song against her chest. She waved to Maple and all her new friends and promised to come back soon with another basket and more stories. At her window, Lily tucked the pebble into a tiny dish and said, "Thank you." The pebble glowed once, like a sleepy wink. Lily fell asleep with the pebble's melody in her ears, dreaming of rainbows and songs and friends waiting in the enchanted forest. The Invisible Friends Club. Mia had a garden that smelled like dirt and sunshine. One morning, she found a crayon and a piece of cardboard and drew a special sign, Invisible Friends Club. She taped the sign to a low branch so neighbors could not see it. Mia clapped and waited. She did not mind that only she seemed to know where the club was. The garden felt like a secret room where the grass listened and the breeze nodded hello. Mia whispered a welcome and sang a tiny hello song. She stuck her tongue out at a beetle and bowed to a ribbon on the fence. Then she tapped the sign with 2 fingers to start club time. She always had a plan: be kind, share, and keep the secret. The rules were simple, written in crayon heart shapes. The garden listened, and the sign swayed like a small yes. The first friend to arrive was Whisk, an invisible cat who loved to purr like the rumble of a small engine. Mia felt a warm brush against her knee and knew it was Whisk. She giggled and held out an empty hand for a high five, and the air did a tiny tickle. Whisk liked nap sunspots and soft socks. Mia told Whisk about the sign and the rules, and the cat answered with a happy, whispery purr. Next came Flit, a tiny invisible bird who sang glittery notes that tickled Mia's ear. Flit zipped and twirled, leaving little sparkles like dandelion dust. Mia opened her hands so Flit could land on the tips of her fingers, and the bird chirped a funny tune. Flit loved to whistle the same short song every time someone laughed. Mia clapped and learned the song too, and their giggles made butterflies fly in her belly. Glow arrived at dusk like a friendly lantern, a small round light that hummed a cozy hum. Glow liked to hover close to faces and warm noses on chilly evenings. Mia cupped her hands and let Glow rest between her palms, feeling a gentle heat that made her hands smell like sugar. Glow did not speak words, but hummed songs that made the garden feel like a blanket. Mia listened and felt braver with that tiny light near her heart. Pebble rolled up next, not by hopping but by nudging itself under a leaf. Pebble was small, round, and patient, and it liked to tell stories about soil and roots. Mia sat very still and listened to Pebble's quiet tales about the ground's sleepy work. Pebble never hurried. When Mia felt fidgety, Pebble reminded her to breathe slow, like a tiny tide. Mia tucked Pebble into her pocket for safekeeping and felt steady all afternoon. Mia wrote the club rules with thick crayon letters and drew hearts around them. Rule 1, be kind. Rule 2, share snacks and stories. Rule 3, listen with more than ears. They practiced a secret handshake that looked like clapping and blowing a tiny kiss to the sky. Each handshake ended with a hug of pretend air. The rules made Mia and her friends feel safe, like a warm blanket tied with ribbon. They played hide-and-seek with giggles that sound like pebbles skipping. Mia covered her eyes and counted slowly while Whisk and Flit tumbled between blades of grass. Glow blinked to signal where one friend might be, and Pebble stayed by the sign to keep watch. When Mia found someone, she squealed with a tiny burst of joy. Even invisible friends made good hiding places, and even better, finding them felt like discovering new stars. For their picnic, Mia laid a small checkered cloth and set out empty plates and little cups. They shared make-believe sandwiches that tasted like sunshine and rainbows. Mia poured pretend tea that smelled of mint and giggles. Whisk nuzzled a napkin, Flit fluttered glitter onto the crust, Glow warmed the cups, and Pebble sat politely near the picnic basket. They ate invisible treats and felt full of happiness anyway. A soft rain began to fall, and Mia opened a bright polka dot umbrella. Whisk shook raindrops off his invisible whiskers, and Flit fluffed invisible wings. Glow glowed braver to keep the ground from getting dark. Mia noticed a tiny beetle trembling on a leaf and used the umbrella to shelter the bug. Everyone helped in their small way. The rain sounded like a drum roll, and together they made a shelter of kindness so the beetle could rest. One afternoon, Whisk grew quiet and did not answer when Mia called his name. Mia listened for purrs, but the garden hummed softly instead. She checked Whisk's favorite sunspot and the soft sock corner, but the place felt empty like a pocket with no coin. Mia's heart thumped like a small drum. She sat down and thought of what Whisk loved: sunny naps, soft songs, and Mia's silly voices. Mia worried, but she remembered their rules: be kind, share, and listen with more than ears. Mia whispered Whisk's favorite silly song and tapped the ground where the cat liked to nap. She asked Flit and Glow and Pebble to help. Flit sang a tiny high note, Glow blinked in steady rhythm, and Pebble told a calm story about roots holding on. Mia held her breath and hummed. The garden listened, and the wind tucked itself close. Mia did not cry. She sang louder, reaching into the quiet like stretching a hand into a pocket. Suddenly, the ground shivered and a faint shimmer curled out of a sunbeam. Whisk returned as a silver sigh, a soft outline that twined around Mia's legs. Mia laughed so loud it sounded like bells. Whisk rubbed against her ankle and purred with happiness. The invisible friend was back because everyone had been patient and kind. Light and Song had found a small, shy heart and drawn it home again. They celebrated by marching around the garden, each friend making a funny face. Mia led with a tiny paper crown made from a leaf and ribbon. Whisk pranced with invisible paws, Flit did loops in the air, Glow lit a twinkling trail, and Pebble clacked a meeting together rhythm on the picnic cloth. Laughter spilled like lemonade, and everyone felt the club's promise grow like the tallest dandelion puff. Mia learned that invisible friends could be quiet when they felt shy, hungry for a nap, or thinking big thoughts. She learned to leave gentle notes and soft songs near their favorite places. Sometimes she sat very still and waited. Sometimes she drew pictures and left them under a leaf so friends could find them in their own time. Patience became another rule for the club, written in tiny crayon letters with a heart underneath. For a new game, they made friendship bracelets from twine, tiny leaves, and a ribbon. Mia looped a leaf around her wrist and tied a small knot with help from Flit's quick wing sparkles and Glow's soft light. Whisk watched from a curled spot, and Pebble sat steady so nothing rolled away. Each bracelet had a little not quite visible thread that only club members could touch. Mia felt proud and important wearing her tiny leaf and ribbon promise. When the sun slid down the sky, Glow shone brighter to light the way. Mia held Glow carefully so it would not get tired. The garden colors softened to sleepy blues and amber. Birds sang the last little songs, and the crickets tuned up their tiny violins. Glow hummed a lullaby, and Mia hummed back. It felt like a gentle blanket wrapping the whole club in safe gold light before bedtime. Mia tucked her friends into cozy places, Whisk into a sock by the shoe pile, Flit into a hair ribbon, Pebble in a little pocket, and Glow into a jar with holes for air. She left the club sign folded beside the bed and slipped a bracelet under her pillow as a secret promise. Mia whispered thank you to each friend and closed her eyes, feeling safe with invisible arms tucked around her like soft clouds. That night, Mia dreamed that the club traveled to the moon on a paper boat, with Glow lighting the way and Flit singing lullabies. Whisk curled into a comet tail, and Pebble told quiet stories about moon dust. In her dream, everything felt safe, and Mia woke with a sunflower smile. She knew the Invisible Friends Club would wait while she napped, and that love could be gentle even when you could not see it. In the morning, Mia ran to the garden with a new crayon and drew a tiny badge, a leaf tied with ribbon. She slid the badge under her pillow and promised to always listen, wait, and play with kindness. The club sign still swayed on the branch, and the garden hummed with secret promise. Mia opened her arms wide as if to hug the whole world. Then she skipped inside to find crumbs for an imaginary feast and a friend for every corner. Every day the club had new small adventures. Sometimes they painted pebble faces, sometimes they built leaf boats, and sometimes they sang very serious songs about socks and buttons. Mia learned that invisible friends could be helpers, listeners, and the very best spot for secrets. She taught her friends songs, and they taught her to be patient. The garden grew with them like a kind, old friend with deep, grassy pockets to hide treasures in. Sometimes Mia met other children at the fence and told them about the most important rule: be kind, even to things you cannot see. Some children smiled and pretended, which made the club bigger in their imaginations. Others simply listened and nodded, and that was enough. Mia always left room for secrets and quiet thinking, because invisible friends liked places to be shy. She learned that sharing did not have to mean losing the specialness of the club. It could make it sparkle more. One evening, Mia wrote a tiny book of club stories with crayon pictures and folded it into a pocket-sized treasure. She read the stories aloud to her invisible friends and to the moon, which blinked slow and pleased. The stories were small, about a cat who loved socks, a bird who sang at noon, a light that could hum softly, and a pebble who told tales of roots. Each story ended with a promise: we will wait for each other and keep kind hearts. Before long, the Invisible Friends Club was as important as a big warm blanket on a chilly day. Mia kept the badge under her pillow, the sign on the branch, and the little rules tied in her pocket. Whenever she felt lonely, she tapped the sign and the friends came back, sometimes as whispers, sometimes as sparkles, and sometimes as a warm sunspot on her shoe. Mia knew magic was not only in big things. It lived in small habits and friendly promises. At bedtime, Mia put on her leaf and ribbon bracelet and whispered a final secret goodnight. The garden breathed out and the stars listened. Whisk purred like the end of a long song, Flit tucked sparkles into Mia's hair, Glow blinked slowly until it looked like a tiny moon, and Pebble hummed a slow, steady note. Mia closed her eyes and felt hands of the invisible friends around her heart. She slept knowing she belonged to something gentle and true. And if you ever find a crayon, a quiet patch of garden, or a folded sign under a branch, Mia would invite you to imagine a club of your own. You might meet a friend who purrs like wind, a bird that sprinkles sparkles, a light that hums, or a pebble that tells stories. The Invisible Friends Club waits in small places where kindness sits and whispers hello. All you need is a little patience, a gentle heart, and a promise to be kind. The Secret Message in a Bottle. Maya loved mornings by the sea. She put on her stripy sun hat, grabbed Biscuit's leash, and walked to the wide, warm sand where the waves whispered. Today the shore smelled like salt and oranges, and little crabs popped like dots in the sand. Something bobbed near the tide line, a glass bottle with a tiny glow inside. Maya crouched, Biscuit sniffed and wagged his short tail, and together they reached for the bottle as if reaching for a secret friend waiting to be met. Maya picked up the bottle and wiped sand from its smooth glass. Inside, like a little sleeping star, was a rolled paper tied with silver seaweed. The cork came out with a small pop and a sprinkle of glitter. Biscuit barked once, excited and proud, and Maya unrolled the paper very slowly. Tiny drawings danced across the page, a heart-shaped rock, a wavy line of shells, and a little shining dot with an arrow. It looked like a map, but the drawings seemed to giggle when she looked at them. The paper had a secret message written in tiny star letters. It said, "Follow the silver dots, help a shy friend, bring a little light." Maya whispered the words aloud, and Biscuit tilted his head as if listening. The map pointed to a heart-shaped rock not far away, so Maya put the bottle into her bag and they began to hop along the warm sand. Every step made a tiny drum beat. Maya hummed, Biscuit pranced, and the sea seemed to watch like a friendly giant with gentle eyes. When they reached the heart-shaped rock, a white seagull swooped down and landed with one wing tucked, as if saying hello. "Hello, I'm Swoosh," he called in a cheerful voice and tipped his head. Swoosh had seen many tides and many bottles, and he decided he would come along. He pointed his beak toward a shallow tide pool where shells lay like small moons. The map's silver dots shimmered like a secret path across the sand. Maya clapped softly. She liked that the adventure had a friend to help. At the tide pool, small waves sighed and showed colorful stones. A crab with a shiny red shell waved a claw and led them toward a tiny hollow beneath a clump of seaweed. "There," whispered Swoosh, and the little hollow gleamed. Inside lay a small folded piece of paper that looked very old. When Maya opened it, the paper breathed a faint silver light. The moonbeam map. It made little sparkles in the air like fireflies, showing a curving line to a hidden cove guarded by a smiling palm tree. They followed the moonbeam map along a path of shells, hopping over little dunes and stepping around sleepy seaweed piles. Sometimes Maya danced in the sand, and Biscuit chased his own shadow. Swoosh flew ahead to check the way and came back bringing tiny sea-scented stories. The sun played peekaboo with a few clouds, and everything felt like a game that only 3 brave friends could play. The silver dots on the map glowed a bit brighter as if cheering them on. Soon they reached a little cove where a tiny island sat like a green bump in the blue, and a small palm tree smiled at the sky. Palm Tree Pete waved his leaves like friendly hands and shaded a cozy nook where the sand was soft. There, tucked in a circle of shells, was a glowing ripple, a small fish no bigger than Maya's hand, shimmering like moonlight on water. The fish blinked with shy silver eyes and trembled a little, as if it had been waiting for very kind helpers. The little fish sighed a tiny bubble and sent another soft glow. "I am Glimmer," it whispered in ripple sounds. "I lost my way to the deep blue where my friends sleep. I get afraid in shallow puddles." Maya knelt and cupped her hands gently. She wrapped a small wet shell around the fish like a blanket and promised she would help. Biscuit pressed his nose gently to the water's edge, and Swoosh unfurled a plan that sounded very important and very funny all at once. They built a tiny, shiny path of shells and sea glass that led from the cove to the edge of the sea, arranging them like stepping stones the fish could follow in the water. Maya hummed a soft song and Swoosh kept watch from above. Biscuit fetched a smooth shell now and then, proud as a helper. The moonbeam map's silver dots winked as if to say, "Yes, that is the way." Little by little, the water grew deeper and the path glowed brighter, helping Glimmer feel braver. When the path reached the gentle surf, Glimmer trembled one last time and then swam forward, leaving a tiny sparkling trail like a silver kite. The deeper water hugged the fish in welcome. Then, pop! A Ripple darted back and left a small pearly gift at Maya's feet. It was a little pearl, warm and humming with gratitude. Glimmer circled once and flicked a thankful shimmer that made the bottle in Maya's bag sparkle, as if it, too, was smiling. The map's secret message now glowed softly on the paper. Kindness finds its way when friends follow the dots. Maya tucked the little pearl into her small palm and felt it warm like a tiny sun. Biscuit wagged so fast his tail was a blur, and Swoosh flew loops as if doing a happy dance. They all cheered in soft voices so the sea would not wake anyone else, and Palm Tree Pete waved his leaves like a sleepy friend saying, "Well done." Before the sun slid down, Maya put the empty, sparkly bottle back on the sand with a new note inside. She wrote in big, careful letters, "Thank you, friends. We helped Glimmer go home. Pass it on." Then she tied it with a little seaweed bow and corked it softly. Biscuit gave a triumphant bark, and Swoosh helped push the bottle so it bobbed out to sea with a tiny silver wake. The bottle glittered like a message full of smiles and set off to find someone else who needed help. As evening painted the sky in pink and blue, Maya and Biscuit walked home with sandy toes and pockets of small shells. Maya held the little pearl safe and whispered a promise to keep helping. She knew the bottle would carry their story somewhere else, maybe to a child with a lost toy or an animal that needed a friend. That night, tucked into bed, Maya placed the warm pearl on her bedside shelf so she could remember how even tiny hands can make big kindnesses. Sometimes, when the moon was a silver pebble, Maya could hear a soft thump at her window, a tiny wave sound that felt like a friend saying hello. She would smile and think of the day the bottle glowed, the map winked, and a shy fish found its way. The secret message in the bottle had been more than paper. It had been an idea that kindness travels on and on, like a little boat across the sea. Maya fell asleep knowing tomorrow might bring another tiny adventure. The day the toys came alive. Night folded like a soft blanket over Leela's room. The moon outside touched the curtains with silver fingers and a small lamp hummed sleep songs. Leela curled up, hugged Teddy the bear close, and sighed a slow, content sigh. On the shelf, Rocket Car rested on its ramp, the wooden train waited on invisible tracks, and the music box sat ready with its tiny tune wound up. The room was quiet and sweet. Then, just as a star blinked twice, the toys stirred and opened bright little eyes. Teddy stretched button arms and whispered, "SHH, tonight we tiptoe." Rocket Car revved, tiny sound like a giggle. Patch Cat Plush blinked both button eyes and twitched its embroidered tail as though it were ready to pounce on a moonbeam. Puzzle blocks wobbled together to make a tiny stage. The music box opened one careful note that floated like a feather. Everyone smiled a little because they had a gentle plan: to play a secret, small show for their friend Leela while she slept on and dreamed. They began with a parade. Rocket Car zipped a soft loop, leaving a line of little laughter sounds. The wooden train chugged along an imagined track, choo-chooing in tiny, polite bursts. Puzzle blocks tumbled into letter towers, and each block clapped its painted face when it landed. Cupcake Robot winked its spun sprinkle eyes and marched with a bouncy hop. The room hummed with careful joy. Even the moon lamp smiled, casting a round golden puddle on the floor where the toys danced and spun. Halfway through their little show, a soft problem popped up. The rainbow kite toy resting by the bedpost had a bent stick and a droopy tail. "Oh dear," said Patch Cat Plush, tiptoeing over, "we cannot have a sad kite on stage." Teddy nodded and said, "We mend it together." Rocket Car offered a sticker for the tail, Wooden Train nudged a puzzle block to use as a splint, and Cupcake Robot whirred to fetch a tiny ribbon. They worked with slow, careful paws and patient clanks until the kite stood proud again. With the kite mended, the music grew. The music box played a soft tune that smelled like honey and warm mittens. The tune told a story of star puddles and friendly clouds. Teddy hummed a hum solo, Patch Cat Plush twirled, and Rocket Car gently pushed the kite into a pretend breeze. The wooden train kept time with a careful clack-clack beat. The toys listened to one another and learned little rhythms, like how to slow the parade so it would not wake Lila's slow, moon-breathing sleep. A small adventure followed outside the bed's edge. A shadowed carpet hill became a mountain to climb. Teddy led the way, using a patchwork blanket as a rope. Rocket Car rolled like a brave explorer, the wooden train chugged each step, and the puzzle blocks built tiny footholds. They sang soft songs about brave crumbs and kind clouds while their tiny feet and wheels carried them up. At the top, they found a secret. A shiny coin tucked under the rug's fringe, a tiny treasure left by a moonbeam long ago. The treasure coin made everyone giggle. Cupcake Robot did a tiny victory spin, scattering sugar sparkle noises. Teddy held the coin to the moon lamp light and it shimmered like a tiny sun. "It can be our star," whispered Patch Cat Plush, tucking it gently inside a block tower. They sang a whisper song and marched back down, careful not to wake sleeping toes. Their footsteps were small, but their hearts felt grand. The room held them like a secret friend, and everything felt soft and safe. Later, the toys decided to put on a tiny play. Puzzle blocks became trees, the music box grew a ribbon dress, and Teddy took the role of a gentle giant who could only speak in kind hugs. Rocket Car zipped lines like speedy wind, while Wooden Train puffed wise old choo-choos. Patch Cat Plush performed a silly tumble that made everyone clap. They practiced soft bows and polite whispers so their applause would be felt more than loudly heard. It was a show for moonbeams and for their favorite friend asleep in the bed. The tiny play was a gentle success. Toys bowed and the moon lamp blinked like a lantern clapping. Leela did not wake, but somewhere in her dreams she laughed softly and turned. The toys whispered that this was the most important applause because a smile in a dream is very real. They all agreed to tuck their props away. Rocket Car rolled the music box ribbon back. Puzzle blocks stacked into a neat tower, and Teddy wrapped the little coin in a soft blanket leaf, hiding it safely in the block tower treasure chest. Suddenly, from the hallway came a tiny sound like a sniffle. The toys froze. A lost sock monster, a rumpled stray sock, had wandered into the room and was shivering under the chair. "Oh," said Patch Cat Plush, padding over with soft feet. Teddy offered his own little scarf. A ribbon and Cupcake Robot hummed a warm tune. The sock monster sniffed, and when the music wrapped it like a blanket, it stopped worrying. The toys learned that kindness could mend more than broken kites. It could warm a tiny lost thing's heart, too. After they helped, the toys felt sleepy in a good way. The music box played the slowest song it had, like a lullaby made of feathers. One by one, Rocket Car parked itself in a cozy groove Wooden Train backed into its usual spot, and Cupcake Robot wound down to a soft tick. Patch Cat plush tucked into a block cave, and Teddy sat by Leela's pillow to keep watch. They whispered the secret rules of sleeping toys: be gentle, be quiet, and return every lost thing to a safer place. But before the final hush, Rocket Car made a tiny idea. "Let's leave Leela a morning surprise," he whispered. The toys all brightened, plotting something small and sweet. Puzzle blocks spelled the word smile, and the music box promised a soft twinkle when opened. They arranged the rainbow kite across the foot of the bed like a bright bookmark, and Teddy tucked the coin where Leela might find it in a careful, secret way. Working together felt like a warm puzzle that fit just right. The first hush of dawn crept in like a shy kitten. The toys hurried to finish. Rocket Car hurried a soft little scoot back on the shelf, Wooden Train clicked into its painted groove, and puzzle blocks shuffled into a neat stack that read smile from the bed's cozy place. Music Box wound the tiniest bit more so it would sing a very small hello when opened. Teddy gave a last tender pat on Leela's hair and whispered, "Sleep well, little dreamer. We'll be here." As morning yawned and light spilled across the room, the toys settled perfectly still. They became soft and still like waiting stones, button eyes gentle and faces calm. Leela stirred, rubbed her sleepy eyes, and blinked at the room. Her gaze landed on the puzzle blocks that whispered smile, and her mouth curved like a sunrise. She reached for Teddy and found, tucked inside the block tower, a tiny shiny coin that winked in the morning light. Leela gasped the smallest, happiest gasp. Leela laughed a bright little laugh and hugged Teddy close. She did not know how the coin got there, how the kite was mended, or why the music box sounded a softer tune, but she felt loved. She whispered a thank you to her toys and gave them the biggest sleepy squeeze. The toys, though still, felt the thank you like a tiny, warm drumbeat. They held it inside like a secret star, knowing they had shared magic and care, and that the room would be ready for another nighttime adventure. All day long, when the sun was bright and playtime noisy, the toys waited patiently for the sun to tuck itself away. They remembered their little night parade and the cozy rescue of the lost sock. When the house sang soft again and Leela's eyes began to droop, the toys looked at one another and winked a tiny wink of promise. Tonight, they thought, we will play gentler, love kinder, and dream even sweeter. For every child who sleeps, toys will keep a careful, starry watch. And so the room learned a secret. When a child loves a toy, that toy carries a little bravery, a little music, and a lot of care. The day the toys came alive was not one day only, but a promise tucked into ribbons and blocks. Each evening, they would wake, tiptoe, and keep the small, kind things that make a room gentle. And Leela, with a morning coin and a heart full of tiny wonder, always smiled a little wider the next day. The Garden Gnome's Secret Mission. When the last child yawns and the garden lights blink sleepy goodnights, the little garden gnome wakes. He stretches one stubby arm and rubs his round nose. His red hat bobbles. He tiptoes from beneath a mushroom roof, holding a tiny brass lantern and a folded map. Tonight is special. He whispers, "SHH, secret mission." The moon listens, and soft shadows hop as he steps onto the cool stone path. The garden smells like damp earth and mint, all ready for a midnight adventure. His first helper is a robin who loves shiny things. The robin hops down, curious about the map. "Where are we going?" it chirps. The gnome points to a drawing of tiny smiles and open flowers. "To gather sleepy giggles and moonlight for morning, so the flowers will wake bright for the picnic," he explains. The robin fluffs up, delighted to work. Together, they tuck the map under the lantern's glow and plan their path, past the puddle, under the ivy arch, and by the old watering can. By the puddle lives a sleepy cat who loves moon puddles nearly as much as naps. The gnome tiptoes and whispers, "We need your slow, soft purrs to tuck the garden awake." The cat opens one golden eye and yawns a big, soft yawn. "I can purr like a warm blanket," it says in a tiny rumble. The gnome and robin listen. The cat curls its tail and hums, sending sleepy, cozy purrs across the pond. Little ripples carry purr music to lily pads and tadpoles. A shy snail slides from a cool leaf, leaving a glittering trail. "I am slow, but I have shimmery tracks that tickle toes awake," it says, whispering. The gnome smiles and ties a tiny ribbon to his pocket pebble whistle for a soft jingle. The snail wraps its shell with a tiny leaf scarf for the mission. Together, they make a quiet parade, snail gliding, gnome stepping, robin tip-tapping. The garden listens, mosses uncurl, and a tiny mushroom gives a polite nod. Fireflies wink on like tiny evening candles, ready to dance. The gnome holds out his lantern and the fireflies swirl into it for a moment, making the light sing. "We will sprinkle moon sparkle across the path," they promise with tiny twinkly voices. The path becomes a ribbon of glowy dots leading under an ivy arch. The gnome hums a little tune, and the robin practices chirpy cheers. The whole garden feels like a sleeping parade of twinkles and soft sounds. They meet a brave little ladybug polishing her spots on a dandelion. "I can carry brave wishes," she says, puffing tiny bug chest out. "I'll fly to the highest bloom and whisper, 'Wake up, it's time to smile.'" The gnome claps his mittened hands. He gives the ladybug a soft petal flag to wave. Together, they practice their wake-up whisper, a gentle, bouncing rhyme that sounds like honey and sunlight. Each friend learns the rhyme so every voice will be ready. The little seedling peeks from the soil, worried and very small. "I want to find the perfect spot to grow up big and tall," it whispers. The gnome kneels gently and says, "We'll help you find sunlight and hugs from friendly roots." The robin points with its beak, the snail makes a sparkly trail, the ladybug scouts high, and the fireflies make a soft glow tunnel. The seedling wiggles happily as they make a cozy bed of leaves and soft soil for a morning stretch. A little storm wind comes by, curious and playful. It wants to race the leaves and knock hats askew. The gnome holds his lantern close while the fireflies swirl faster. "We must be gentle but brave," says the robin. The sleepy cat stretches and steadies a stone to block the gust. The ladybug holds the seedling's leaf like an umbrella. Everyone works in tiny ways until the wind blusters onward, chuckling, satisfied it played politely with friends. The gnome checks the tiny map again. The last step is a hush and a song. They gather in a circle, gnome lantern, robin chest, cat paws, snail shell, ladybug wings, and fireflies like stars above. Each friend hums their gift, purrs, chirps, jingles, and soft wing trumps. The gnome holds the pebble whistle and taps it so the sound is a gentle bell. Together, they sing the Bounce of Sun rhyme, a soft tune that smells like toast and morning dew. As they sing, little petals begin to wiggle from their sleep. One by one, sleepy blossoms stretch long stems and blink open eyes of petals. The moon claps with its silver hands. The seedling gives a tiny sneeze of sunlight, and the lawn seems to giggle. The gnome and friends tiptoe back so not to scare the blooms, watching in whisper silence as the garden wakes like a big cozy book opening to the sky. When the first hint of morning pink tickles the clouds, the gnome smiles a secret smile. The garden looks ready for the picnic: bright flowers, a neat little spot for a blanket, and a soft wind carrying fresh bread smells from far away. The robin flutters up and sings a tiny sunrise tune. The sleepy cat yawns its biggest yawn and curls again with a contented purr. All the friends feel proud that the garden will wake with giggles and happy faces. The gnome tidies his map, blows a little kiss to the moon, and gathers his lantern. He thanks each friend with a soft touch, a rub on the robin's chest, a pat for the cat, a leaf bow to the snail, a wink to the ladybug, and a thankful clap for the fireflies. "You helped me on my secret mission," he says quietly. The friends giggle in their garden voices and promise to help whenever the garden needs a nap waker or a smile bringer again. As the sun lifts higher, two small children wander down the garden path, rubbing sleepy eyes and humming. They stop short. The garden greets them with open-faced sunflowers and a sprinkle of morning giggles. The children laugh and say, "Who woke everything up?" They find a tiny pebble whistle, a ribbon, and a tiny folded map near a mushroom door. Their eyes sparkle with wonder. They do not know the gnome's secret, but their smiles make the gnome's day glow brighter. Back under his mushroom roof, the gnome places his lantern by a tiny window and tucks the map into a snug drawer. He pats his hat, and the pebble whistle hangs on a little nail to jingle in future adventures. He hums the same bounce of sun rhyme, now quieter because it is almost nap time for him. Outside, the garden buzzes softly with colors and friendly chatter from bees and butterflies starting their day. Just before the gnome closes his eyes, he writes one line on his map in tiny dotted letters: "Mission, make smiles." He draws a small heart beside it and tucks the map under his pillow. The moon peeks through a slit in the curtains and nods goodnight. The gnome dreams of tomorrow's quiet missions. Maybe a lost caterpillar to help, perhaps a shy bud to sing to. He snores a small, happy snore, and the garden keeps its secret safe. In the morning, the children cuddle up beneath a sun hat and spread the blanket where the garden looks happiest. They giggle, they taste jammy berries, and they listen close to hear if the flowers will tell them the secret. The gnome watches from a far corner, his cheeks dimpling with joy. He does not need to be known. His reward is the chorus of laughter that fills the garden air. This is the sweetest part of his secret mission. And so, whenever the sky grows soft and sleepy again, the little garden gnome remembers his map and his list of tiny friends. He knows a secret mission is always waiting: a whisper to a bud, a song for a snail, and a brave little ladybug to carry wishes. He hops into his shoes, straightens his hat, and tiptoes out with lantern and laugh, ready to make more smiles, because gardens and giggles belong to everyone, seen and unseen. The Dragon's Birthday Party Fiasco. Dara the dragon woke up the morning of her birthday with a flutter in her tummy. Sunlight slipped through the leaves and made a golden spot on her leaf-shaped pillow. She nuzzled her stuffed cloud and practiced a tiny happy puff that smelled faintly of clover. Today the forest would be full of friends, music, and cake. Dara's eyes sparkled with plans: pretty balloons, a picnic blanket, and a song that everyone could sing together. She put on a small blue ribbon and hurried outside to prepare. One by one, the friends arrived, each carrying something special. Benny Bunny bounced in with a basket of sweet carrot cupcakes and a paper hat pinned to his ear. Squeak the squirrel tumbled down from an oak branch with a string of sparkling balloons looped around his tail. Pip the bird fluttered in, singing tiny notes with a shiny feather tucked behind one ear. Tilly the turtle came slowly, steady as a drum, holding a small old music box wrapped in twine. The clearing smelled like grass and giggles. They spread the picnic blanket under a friendly oak and began to decorate. Dara tied streamers between branches while Squeak carefully placed balloons in a bright cluster. Benny distributed starry party hats and Pip perched on a twig to hang tiny paper lanterns. Tilly set the music box in the middle, winding it slowly until a sweet, tinkling melody began. The song wobbled like a little bell, and everyone clapped along. It felt like magic. Leaves rustled applause, and the sun winked through the branches. Dara wanted to light the candles herself because tiny dragon puffs can be very precise. She breathed a small, careful puff to warm the candle wicks and smiled proudly. But Dara giggled at how proud she felt. Her giggles made her tummy tickle, and her tiny puffs puffed a little stronger. A barely there breeze nudged balloons and toppled one hat. Pip chirped, "Oh!" Benny's ears flopped in surprise, and even the music box played a skip in its tune. Everyone giggled because surprises were funny at parties. Then the first little mishap happened. When Dara tried again, one puff asked to be extra excited, and whoosh, candles flared a wee bit too bright. The frosting on top steamed like a hot marshmallow, and the cake trembled with surprise. Squeak clutched his balloons, and Benny used his paws to fan a gentle breeze away from the flames. Dara turned her head apologetically, cheeks rosy. She didn't like making trouble. Tilly wound the music box again to calm the tune, and everyone watched the patch of steam curl up into the sky. Countless little giggles and puffs led to more tiny surprises. A stray puff sent a few balloons floating faster than Squeak expected, and one balloon nudged a paper hat until it tumbled into the grass. Pip fluttered after the hat like a blue bird on a windy day. The friends tried to steady the decorations, but every time they adjusted something, Dara's excitement made a new wobble begin. They all laughed a little louder. Laughter was the best tablecloth, folding them together even when things wobbled. Benny suggested a silly game to calm everyone down, a hat parade. Each friend collected a hat, put it on, and marched around the blanket to the tiny music box tune. Dara marched too, careful to keep her puffs tiny, but halfway through her snooty snout wiggle, she hiccuped a puff that blew the music box's little lid up. The lid popped, and the tune turned into a comical squeak. The friends laughed so hard their steps slowed, and a small butterfly landed on Dara's ribbon as if listening with them. For the next surprise, someone brought out the sparklers. No, not sparklers, just fizzy fruit drinks that bubbled and fizzed. The bottles popped and tickled everyone's noses. Dara sneezed the tiniest puff that tickled a balloon string, and the string slipped free. One balloon drifted toward the stream and danced on the breeze. It bobbed over pebbles and leaves, making a soft splish-splash sound like a tiny drum. "Oh dear," called Tilly, steady but worried. The friends jumped to help chase the drifting balloon. They tried to catch the balloon, but it had a mind of its own. It floated just out of reach, teasing them over rocks and leaves. Pip flew after it, chirping encouragement, while Squeak scurried and Benny hopped. Dara moved very slowly so she wouldn't puff the balloon farther away, but her excitement made her step a little too quick, and whoops. The cake you hadn't noticed was placed on a small hill began to wobble. The cake rolled gently like a sweet round pebble, and the friends gasped. The cake rolled faster than anyone expected. It bounced once, twice, and popped a bit of frosting like a tiny cloud. The cake sailed past the picnic blanket and went tumbling down a little grassy slope toward a shallow bend in the stream. "Stop!" cried Benny, but the cake was already hopping on a pebble like a merry, sticky rock. Pip fluttered above, flapping hard, and Squeak clicked his teeth in worry. Dara's heart beat soft and loud. She felt responsible, even though it was an accident. The cake hopped onto a smooth stone and slid into the shallow water with a tiny plop. For a moment, there was cake bobbing like a little raft. The frosting rippled with the water, and a few sprinkles drifted away like colorful seeds. Tilly, who had the slowest steps but the steadiest heart, suggested making a raft. "We can build a safe boat for Cake," she said in her steady voice. Everyone looked at one another and then nodded with determination, ready to work as a team. First, they found fallen twigs and a flat bit of bark. Squeak scurried to collect small leaves while Benny balanced a larger leaf like a paddle. Pip fetched light feathers, and Tilly arranged the twigs in a neat little stack. Dara gently blew the tiniest puff to push the cake raft toward the bank, careful not to make waves. Her breath was soft and warm, like a summer breeze, and the friends held their breaths until the cake bumped gently against the mud and sheltered rocks. When the cake was safe, the frosting was a little squished but still sweet. The friends clapped and giggled, and Benny offered the first slice to Dara with a flour-dusted bow. Dara's eyes filled with warm tears that were really tiny, glistening smiles. She felt loved even when things went wobble-wobble. They set the cake back on the blanket and rearranged hats and balloons, tying strings extra snug. The music box played again, this time steady and bright, and Pip began a cheerful trill that made everyone sway. Just when they thought the surprises were over, a sudden gust from some playful wind tangled the balloons into a big, colorful knot. The knot lifted the streamers and almost sent the party hats spinning. Dara laughed so strongly that she hiccuped a tiny heart-shaped puff that floated like a soap bubble. The sound of their laughter chased the wind away, but the balloons stayed stubbornly knotted. Squeak bit his lip in concentration, and Benny rubbed his paws together. The friends were ready for one more clever plan. They tried gentle tugs, steady pulls, and soft wiggles, but the knot held firm. Then Pip had an idea. Make a little pulley using a twig and a loop of string, and let Tilly guide the music box melody to keep everyone calm. Working together, they built the simple pulley and took turns humming the song. Slowly, carefully, the knot loosened. The balloons drifted free and bobbed above like a friendly rainbow. All the friends cheered, their voices folding into the music box's tinkling tune. At last, it was time for the birthday song. Everyone put on their hats and circled the picnic blanket. Tilly wound the music box, and Pip fluttered above, leading the tune. Benny hopped and clapped, Squeak twirled his tail, and Dara sat very still, taking a deep, careful breath so her puffs would be gentle. They sang a happy, bumbling song that made stars of leaves twinkle overhead. When the song ended, Dara closed her eyes and blew out the candles with the tiniest, faintest puff she could make. After the song, they shared the cake and the fizzy drinks, and every bite tasted like the kind of perfect sweet that comes from friendship. They told silly stories about the morning's mishaps, the dancing balloon, the rolling cake, and the knot of balloons that turned into a rainbow. Dara hugged each friend with a careful, warm squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered, when the sun began to dip. The friends arranged themselves into a cozy pile of smiles on the blanket, full and sleepy and bright-eyed. As evening painted the sky in lavender and tangerine, the music box played a soft lullaby. Fireflies began to blink like tiny lanterns above the clearing. The friends leaned back and watched the first stars appear, counting one by one. Dara's ribbon fluttered in the cool breeze, and a dandelion seed drifted onto her nose, making her giggle quietly. They promised to remember this birthday, not because everything went perfectly, but because they had helped each other when things went topsy-turvy. Before they left, Dara gave each friend a tiny thank you gift, a hand-drawn star on a leaf. The stars shone just a little in the dim light because they were made with giggles and gratitude. Benny tucked his leaf into his hat, Squeak pinned his behind his ear, Pip held his carefully in a claw, and Tilly placed hers on her shell. Dara kept the smallest star for herself and put it by her pillow that night. She felt sleepy and very, very loved. When the moon rose high, the clearing quieted to a hush of soft snores and contented breaths. Dara curled up on her leaf-shaped pillow and remembered every wobble and giggle of the day. She thought about how a rolling cake had become an adventure and how a balloon knot had become a rainbow. Sleep wrapped her like a warm blanket, and in her dreams, the friends danced around a cake that smiled with frosting moons. Tomorrow, the forest would tell the story of the dragon's delightful, messy, marvelous birthday. Long after the party, flowers near the stream still looked a little dusted with frosting sprinkles, and a tiny music note seemed to hum in the breeze. Neighbors walked by and smiled, because in that forest a birthday had been more than candles and presents. It had been a day when friends fixed mistakes with kind hands and silly ideas. Dara woke the next morning with a stretch and a smile, already planning next year's party, perhaps with kites instead of balloons. She giggled and practiced a careful puff, ready for new surprises. The Castle in the Clouds. Mila loved looking up. She had a small ladder on her window and a big jar of pretend clouds. One bright morning, she climbed the ladder and reached out to touch the sky. Her fingers found something soft and bouncy, like cotton candy that giggled. When she pulled her hand back, a tiny puff of cloud fox popped out with a surprised sneeze. It blinked with button eyes and gave a little wag of its fluffy tail, as if it had been waiting for a friend. The fox yawned a tiny swirl of mist and said, in a noise like a giggle hello. Mila laughed and named him Pip because his nose sounded like a tiny pop. Pip hopped onto her lap and left a little sparkle on her sleeve. Windy arrived, not as a person, but as a dancing breeze that tickled Mila's hair and made Pip's tail fluff up in delight. Windy hummed a soft tune that sounded like someone rubbing leaves together, and it smelled faintly of warm bread and rain. Windy whispered a secret. There was a castle hiding high inside the clouds, full of rooms that rolled like soft cushions and roofs made of candy-colored swirls. Mila's eyes grew huge. Pip pranced and made a tiny cloud trail like footprints. Windy bobbed and pointed with a puff toward a glittering shape way up above. Together, they climbed a ladder made of silver ropes that dangled from a cloud, each step singing a little bell sound. The ladder was safe and tickly, and when they reached the top, the castle doors opened wide with a friendly creak. Inside the castle, everything felt soft like a hug. The halls floated and swayed gently, and the floors were made of sleepy cloud pillows that bounced a little with every step. Star lanterns bobbed above like low-flying fireflies, each one humming a tiny story when Mila reached up to touch them. Pip chased a lantern that zipped away with a merry buzz, and Windy giggled until the soft curtains made a happy swishing sound. Mila clapped. The castle clapped back with a faint, chiming echo. It all seemed as kind as a warm blanket. They found a room where the walls were painted with tiny smiling moons, and in the corner rested a moon drum. When Mila tapped it lightly, the drum made a round, sleepy beat like a heart saying good night. The sound floated through the castle and made the star lanterns shimmer brighter. Pip curled up and listened, and Windy puffed soft notes that made the curtains ripple like slow waves. Each beat felt like a story being told, and Mila imagined all the nights the drum had sung to the clouds before she arrived. As they wandered, the castle began to sway more than usual. A big gust of giggling wind rushed by and tugged a candy cupola like a hat on a head. A few star lanterns bobbed away, and the silver ropes jingled in surprise. Mila felt her stomach do a little flip, but Pip nudged her hand and Windy wrapped an encouraging curl around her wrist. "We can fix it," Windy hummed, and Mila took a deep breath. She remembered how she once helped a neighbor find a missing sock, and the feeling of being brave bubbled up. Together, they sang a steady song, tapping the moon drum to keep the beat. Mila sang about helping and sharing, Pip sang little pop noises that sounded like good jokes, and Windy hummed like a lullaby that smelled of rain. The castle listened. Each kind word made the ropes feel stronger and the walls puff back into shape. The star lanterns floated home, one by one, remembering their bright places. The candy cupolas righted themselves and gave a tiny twinkle, as if the castle were winking its thanks to the new friends. They explored a playground room where bells grew on cloud trees and slides went down into soft fluff. Pip slid first and came out giggling like a windy bell. Mila climbed the cloud tree and rung a bell that sang the name of the sun, which made a tiny patch of blue peel through the clouds like paint. Windy chased the bell's echo until it returned to sleep in a star lantern. They played until Mila's cheeks were rosy and her eyes shone with a tired, happy kind of sparkle. When the sun began to yawn, Windy told them it was time to go home, but the castle had one more gift. In the tallest tower, a window opened, and a soft, warm light poured out like a bedtime blanket. The star lanterns lined up like a parade to the ladder, and each gave Mila a tiny, shimmering ribbon to tuck into her hair. Pip curled into a fluffy ball and pressed his forehead to hers. "We will come back," Mila promised, and the castle hummed a little tune that felt like a promise back. Back down the silver ropes they climbed, each step ringing like tiny bells, and the ladder folded itself into a soft cloud when they touched the ground. Mila put her hands into her pockets and found the shimmering ribbon glowing very gently. Pip did a happy little dance and then tucked himself into Mila's scarf like a tiny sleepy cloud. Windy gave them a twirling goodbye that made the leaves on Mila's tree wink. The sky settled. The castle floated higher, a smiling patchwork in the clouds, waving with its candy cupolas. That night, tucked under her blanket, Mila placed the ribbon on her bedside table. The star lanterns hummed faintly from the sky, and the moon drum tapped a sleepy pulse in her dreams. Pip curled by her pillow, warm and soft, and Windy slipped in through the crack of the window to kiss Mila's cheek with a breeze that smelled like rain and cookies. Mila closed her eyes and remembered the castle's clap and the drum's friendly thump. She felt held, cozy, and a little braver than before. In the morning, Mila woke with a tiny cloud of sparkles sitting on her shelf, a little note tied to it that read, "See you soon." She smiled and slid on her cloud-patterned boots. Outside, the world felt softer, as if it had learned to hum. Every time Mila helped someone or shared a laugh, she felt the castle's tunes swell inside her chest. Pip pranced at her feet, ready for another day of small adventures. And high above, the castle in the clouds twinkled, keeping its door open for friends with brave hearts. The Haunted House on Maple Street. On a quiet street called Maple Street, there is a tall, slightly crooked orange house with rounded windows and a porch swing. Children whisper it is haunted, but Mia and Ben like secrets. Mia wears red rain boots and a yellow scarf and carries a tiny brass lantern. Ben wears a blue cap and keeps a small wooden toy airplane in his pocket. Their striped, fluffy cat Whisk purrs loudly and twitches his whiskers. Tonight the moon is a big, gentle friend, and the air smells like maple leaves and summer honey. They walk up the path, crunching little maple leaves that clap like tiny hands. The porch swing sways as if waving hello. A tiny lantern on Mia's belt glows in rainbow colors, and the house peeks out with a friendly grin of light from every window. The wind hums a quiet tune. Mia feels brave. Ben feels curious. Whisk heads for the bottom step and finds a trail of glittering dust motes that sparkle like tiny stars. The house does not shout or roar, it simply twinkles as if waiting to share a game. A small giggle floats from inside the house. "Peekaboo," calls a friendly voice, and a soft swirl of light drifts out the open door. Out floats Glimmer the ghost, tiny and translucent, with twinkling eyes and a warm smile. Glimmer bobbles in the air like a bubble and tilts their head. "Welcome, welcome," the ghost giggles, sounding like wind chimes. Mia and Ben laugh back. Whisk purrs, rubbing against Glimmer's gentle glow. This is not a scary ghost. This ghost loved jokes, blankets, and warm cookies. Glimmer takes them inside where the house is full of friendly surprises. A hallway clock hums a lullaby, rugs giggle when tickled by little feet, and picture frames blink happy eyes. A row of teacups on a shelf sing tiny songs when dusted by the breeze. "Play hide and seek," Glimmer asks, and the children clap. Room after room offers a new soft surprise. A pillow pile that bounces like a cloud, a window that shows the moon winking, and tiny glowing footprints that lead further in. They follow the glowing footprints into the kitchen where a bright blue cookie jar sits on the counter. The jar is covered in star stickers and makes a soft giggle whenever someone reaches near. "Cookies," Ben whispers, eyes wide. The cookie jar jiggles with a happy sound. Pots and pans clap like tiny drums and the oven hums a gentle tune. Mia sets down her lantern and the rainbow light tickles a tiny spoon. Whisk leaps up to inspect and finds a crumb that tastes like sunshine. After a small cookie or two, they step outside to the big maple tree that stands beside the house. The tree's knots look like smiling faces and its leaves rustle as if laughing. "Swing?" the tree seems to ask, and the porch swing rocks itself. Mia climbs into the swing and Ben gives a tiny push. The swing swooshes and sings. Glimmer twirls in the air, leaving a trail of little lights. Whisk curls in a leaf bed that smells like cinnamon dreams. Night feels like a friendly blanket. They play a treasure hunt where glowing footprints lead to tiny treasures. A teacup that sings a lullaby, a pebble that remembers tickles, and a button that buzzes like a tiny drum. The house helps by nudging a curtain to point the way. Each find makes them clap and giggle louder. Even the moon leans closer to listen. The night wraps around them all, soft as a quilt. They are explorers in a gentle wonderland where even a creak feels like a friendly hello. Suddenly, the tiny lantern on Mia's belt flickers and goes a soft, tiny dark. The rainbow glow winks off like a shy firefly. Oh no, Mia's lantern had been their little map of light. For a heartbeat, the house looks careful and hush-hushing. But then everyone, the clock, the tree, the cookie jar, joins in to help. Glimmer shines a gentle glow, Whisk brings a bright dust mote, and Ben pats his pocket where his toy airplane glows a little silver. They all work together fast and gentle. Now comes the most sparkling part, a joyful fix. Glimmer gathers all the tiny lights in a little swirl and whispers a happy hum. The dust motes, the moonbeam, and the toy airplane's silver shimmer knit together and jump into Mia's lantern. Tiny rainbows leap and the lantern brightens like a flower opening. Hooray! They all cheer. The house claps its wooden hands and the teacups do a bubbly giggle dance. Everyone dances in a ring of light, stamping out a soft rhythm of claps and purrs. With lights back and hearts full, they decide to have a moonlit cookie party. The cookie jar tops itself open and offers biscuits that smell like sugar sunshine. The oven sings a soft puff and the teacups clink a little tune. They sit on the porch step, sharing crumbs and stories. Ben tells a flying airplane story, Mia hums a brave boat song, and Whisk offers gentle purrs for comfort. Glimmer listens and tells silly ghost knock-knock jokes. The night feels like a warm hug from the whole house. When stories grow sleepy, Glimmer gathers small, soft sparks and sprinkles them into the air like tiny lantern feathers. For dreams, Glimmer whispers and the sparks curl gently around each child. The maple leaves hush and the swing slows. Mia puts her lantern back on and tucks a crumb into her pocket for morning. Ben folds his airplane wings and smiles. Whisk finds a warm lap and makes a loud purr. The house hums a lullaby, low and cozy, as if tucking everyone into a blanket of night. It is time to go home. Mia and Ben stand and hug Glimmer, who hugs back with a breeze that smells like maple cookies. "Will you come again?" Mia asks. Glimmer nods and twinkles extra bright. The house waves a porchboard hello, and the maple tree rustles a friendly goodbye. The path glitters with the same tiny footprints that led them in, and Whisk trots beside them like a furry little night guard. The moon smiles down and the stars blink a sleepy hello. They walk home slowly, carrying warm pockets of wonder. At home, they tuck under blankets and whisper about the night's games. Outside the house on Maple Street, a tiny golden maple leaf glows on their doorstep, still warm from the porch hugs. Mia puts the leaf in a small box by her bed. Ben draws a picture of Glimmer with a crayon airplane flying around a smiling house. Whisk curls up at the foot of the bed, still dreaming of crumbs and dancing teacups. Even the moon keeps watch until eyes grow heavy and soft dreams begin. In the morning, the leaf is still there, only now it is a tiny bright bookmark for a day of new adventures. Mia and Ben skip to school with pockets full of crumbs and pockets full of secret smiles. They wave at the crooked orange house when they pass, and the porch swing gives a small squeak as if winking. Glimmer peeks out a window and tiptoes a friendly little hello with a sparkle. On Maple Street, the haunted house keeps its friendly secrets and waits quietly for the next night of giggles. That evening, as the sun slides down, the house on Maple Street looks neither scary nor plain. It looks like a place that knows stories. People who walk by tip their hats and whisper, "There goes the house with the laughing teacups." Children tell each other about the little ghost who shares light, and neighbors sometimes hear a soft chuckle carried by the wind. But mostly, the house simply glows, waiting for small feet and bright lanterns to come back. Magic, they learn, is often just friendly surprise. The Little Ghost Who Loved Cake. In a hush of silver moonlight, Little Ghost floated through Cozy Hollow with a happy wiggle. Little Ghost could not taste cakes, but oh, the smells made the tiny glow brighter. Cake smelled like giggles and warm hugs, sugar, vanilla, and tiny cinnamon secrets. Every night, Little Ghost peeked in Greta, the cat baker's window, to watch frosting whirl and eggs and flour dance. Greta hummed soft tunes while bowls spun, and Little Ghost clapped its little ghostly hands, delighted by each plop and swirl. Greta always left her bakery window just a tiny bit open so the sweetest smells could float out to the street. Little Ghost loved to ride those smells like a kite. One evening, a soft bell rang outside the bakery door. Wibble the mouse scurried in with bright whiskers and a squeaky hello. Wibble loved crumbs and stories. Together, Wibble and Little Ghost watched Greta roll a big cake batter into tall pans. Little Ghost blinked with joy as the cake puffed up like a fluffy cloud. One night, a town notice fluttered by the bakery door. Cozy Hollow was planning a moonlight picnic for all the neighbors. "We need a very special cake," cried Wibble, eyes wide with crumbs of excitement. Little Ghost wiggled and twinkled. "I can help," thought Little Ghost, though friends knew it could not nibble a single bite. Little Ghost wanted nothing more than to make the picnic perfect for everyone, so it decided to be the helper with the brightest glow. Greta smiled and said, "We'll bake a birthday cake big as the hill." She opened a jar of sprinkles that sparkled like tiny fireworks. Little Ghost floated close, feeling proud but puzzled. "How can I help?" it asked in a whisper that sounded like a soft bell. Greta tapped a paw to her apron. "You can do what you do best, light the candles with your glow, and tell gentle jokes if any candles feel shy." Little Ghost beamed a tiny, ghostly grin. The day of the picnic arrived with the moon smiling wide. Friends carried the soft red and white checkered blanket to the hill. Greta rolled the big birthday cake onto the blanket, frosting it into clouds of white and painting stripes of rainbow inside. Little Ghost floated above and watched every ribbon of icing. Wibble danced with a tiny spoon and tried a crumb with a happy squeak. Even though Little Ghost could not taste, it felt the friends' joy bubble up like the best kind of fizz inside its glow. When Greta lifted the cake to set sugar candle stars on top, the tiniest candle refused to stay lit. "Oh dear," Greta whispered. The friends huddled close. Little Ghost floated forward and blew the gentlest of gusts that glowed warm, not a wind that would blow out candles, but a glow that made tiny flames feel brave. Each candle flickered awake, shining like a row of tiny moons. The birthday cake seemed to sigh in delight, dusted with sparkles that danced like fireflies. As everyone cheered, a sprinkle storm began not from the sky, but from Wibble's clumsy spill of the jar. Sprinkles hopped and twinkled across the blanket like confetti. Little Ghost laughed with a tinkling sound that made the sprinkles shimmer different colors. "A sprinkle dance," Greta sang, twirling a spatula. Little Ghost fluttered through the dancing sprinkles, feeling like it could taste color itself when friends smiled. The air smelled even sweeter now, with cinnamon and moon sugar that made tiny hearts skip. Just then, a little kitten from down the lane arrived late and timidly asked if there was room at the picnic. Her name was Minka and her whiskers trembled. Greta scooped her into a warm paw and said, "There's always room for one more." Little Ghost drifted nearer and wrapped a friendly glow around Minka like a soft blanket. Minka's eyes sparkled, and she purred like a little bell. Everyone at the picnic felt cozy and full of kindness, the sort of sweet that tastes like friendship. After singing a merry song, Greta carefully cut a slice of the birthday cake for each friend. Wibble nibbled, Minka purred, and Greta savored a spoonful with closed eyes. Little Ghost drifted through the feast, collecting tiny crumbs of laughter and storing them in its glow. When a shy cloud drifted over the moon, the candle flames wavered, but Little Ghost flared a little brighter, and the light came back. "Thank you," Greta said softly. "Your glow keeps the magic alive." At the end of the night, everyone lay on their backs looking up at the friendly silver moon. Little Ghost felt a warm, new feeling settle inside. Sharing made its glow feel fuller than any cake could. The moon winked as if to say, "Well done." Greta tucked the last crumbs into a tiny bag for Wibble and gave Little Ghost a flour-dusted kiss on the forehead. Wibble whispered a secret recipe for midnight muffins. They all promised to bake, share, and make picnics together again. Little Ghost drifted home that night with pockets full of laughter and a glow that hummed like a small bell. Though it never ate cake, the memory of frosting clouds and candlelight wrapped around it like a warm scarf. Under the silver moon, Little Ghost dreamed of sprinkles that sang and candles that told jokes. Every night after, Little Ghost visited Greta's window to watch new cakes rise and new friends arrive, knowing that the best flavors were kindness and shared smiles. The Ghost in the Old Lighthouse. On a small rocky island, where the waves whispered stories and the moon liked to watch, stood the Old Lighthouse. It had a red door that had been painted many times and a brass lamp that loved to glow. Leela, the little keeper, lived there with Patch the tabby cat. Leela wore a yellow raincoat that smelled faintly of lemons and always had bright eyes for trouble and wonder. Patch had one white paw and a bell that jingled like tiny silver bells when she walked. Every night, the lighthouse kept the way safe for boats that hummed their own sleepy songs. One night, when the wind told especially long tales, a small sparkle slipped through a window and hung in the stairwell like a tiny star. Leela heard a soft giggle and tipped her head. Patch pricked her ears and walked very slowly toward the sparkle. The little glow wobbled and blinked, showing a soft blue face with a crooked smile. "Hello," it whispered like a bell. Leela laughed gently and said, "Hello there. Who are you?" The sparkle twirled shyly and whispered back, "Glimmer." Glimmer was not scary at all. He was the tiniest ghost anyone had ever met, with a warm glow and a habit of leaving soft sparkles on the banister. He loved to tidy the glass of the lantern, because cleaned glass made him dance the prettiest. He liked to hide under a teacup and pop out to make Patch purr. Leela listened to his soft hums and hummed back. Slowly, the hush of the lighthouse grew into a quiet song of friends learning each other's names and favorite little things. Days slipped by like small warm boats. Leela taught Glimmer how to wind the lamp's old key and how to listen for the bell that tolled when fog came. Patch taught Glimmer how to play hide and pounce without startling the fish. Glimmer learned where crumbs liked to hide and how to make dust bunnies giggle. They shared jam on toast at dawn and watched the sea's silver ribbon in the morning. Each evening grew softer because 3 small friends lived in the lighthouse now. One tidy afternoon, while Patch chased a ribbon of seaweed that had blown in, her bell jingled and she batted at something small and bright under an old tin box. Patch carefully nudged it out with her white paw. It was a tiny brass key, twisty and warm to the touch. The key shimmered as if it remembered the sound of a bell from long ago. Leela picked it up and turned it over. "Where did you find that?" she asked. Patch meowed like she had found the beginning of an adventure. The little key fit into a tiny hidden lock beneath the spiral stairs. When Leela turned it, a little wooden panel creaked open to reveal a folded map and a note tied with sea blue twine. Patch sniffed and pressed her whiskers on the paper. The note read, "Sing to the sea and the lamp will remember how to shine." The map showed a tiny marked spot near the top of the lighthouse and a doodle of a smiling wave. Everyone looked at each other. Even the wind seemed to lean in. That night they tried a little sea song. Glimmer hummed in a thin, bright voice, Leela tapped a wooden spoon on a teacup, and Patch mewed along like a tiny chorus. The brass lamp blinked and seemed to listen. Outside, the moon made the waves glimmer like little silver coins. When the song ended, the lamp gave a happy chime and its light grew cozy, like a blanket. The lighthouse seemed to sigh and settle, pleased by the song and the small sleepy noise of friendship. The next morning, the sea sounded different. Clouds gathered like a flock of gray sheep, and the air smelled like a storm cookie. Leela checked the lamp and tightened a bolt. Patch greeted a gust of wind by flicking her tail. Seagull Swoop arrived, wings cutting the wind as he squawked. "Storm is coming." The little island readied itself. Leela stuffed extra blankets and stacked lantern oil, while Glimmer fluffed the curtains until they waved politely like small flags. Everyone felt the great, soft hush before a storm. When night fell, the storm knocked and knocked like a giant at the windows. Rain drummed on the roof and waves jumped high enough to sing thunder songs. The lamp struggled as the wind blew harder. The coast lights of far-off boats bobbed like sleepy fireflies in the dark. Leela wound the lamp tight, but the flame kept swaying. Patch curled on Leela's boots and jingled softly to show she was brave. Glimmer felt a strange flutter. He wanted to help more than dust and dances. The wind howled louder. The lamp's glass rattled. Far away, a little boat's light flickered like it needed help. Leela's hands worked fast, but the ancient brass gears creaked and a spring snapped. The lamp dimmed to a tired whisper. "Oh no," Leela breathed. Patch bounced forward and pressed her paw against a small wheel. Glimmer zipped up the stairwell in a streak of blue, trying to find anything loose. The lighthouse trembled and the sea sang louder. A tiny knot of worry sat in everyone's bellies. Glimmer felt a brave sparkle grow. He zipped into the lantern room and floated close to the dim flame. "I can help," he whispered, though ghosts don't always speak so loudly. He pressed his warm glow next to the lamp and hummed the little sea song they had practiced. The song echoed around the brass and glass, and the lamp blinked like a sleepy friend waking. With a whoosh of courage, Glimmer's glow and the lamp's flame touched and fizzed into a bright, steady light. The room filled with a golden cheer that felt almost like a hug. Leela remembered the tiny brass key and the hidden gear. She darted down the stairs and turned the key into a small brass wheel. The mechanism clicked and hummed as old parts remembered their old dances. Patch twined around Leela's boots and Seagull Swoop circled like a cheering ribbon. Together the little team turned, wound, and sang until the lamp thumped into a robust, steady glow that could be seen far across the sea. The storm still raged, but the lighthouse shone with proud bravery. Outside, sailors saw the steady beam and found their way. A small boat bobbed safe and waved bright lanterns. The sea that had roared began to murmur and then calm. The clouds sighed apart and the moon peeked through, proud as an audience. Back inside, everyone cheered, Leela clapped, Patch twirled in a happy loop, and Seagull Swoop cried out a silly, triumphant song. Glimmer floated higher and higher until he giggled so loud he left a trail of stars. They all felt the very big, very warm glow that comes when friends help one another. After the storm, the lighthouse smelled like salt and soap and fresh linen. Leela made warm tea and everyone shared a bit of toast. Glimmer floated down and rested his glow on the windowsill, telling a tiny story about the first night he learned to hum. Leela listened and then told a little story about a kitten who once chased a moonbeam. Patch stretched and purred like a small motor. The island felt snug and safe, wrapped in the light that had been mended by a song, a key, a cat, and a kind keeper. That night, Glimmer told Leela a secret. He had once been a helper in the lighthouse long, long ago. When the sea was very young, he learned how to keep lamps warm and how to hum the old songs. One day he decided to travel to the moon to bring back a dust mote, but he missed the lamp and came back as a tiny glow. He had been shy because people sometimes thought ghosts were frightening. Leela hugged him with words and Patch rubbed noses as if to say, "We are your family now." From then on, the lighthouse had an extra kind of light. Glimmer kept the lamp cozy on the darkest nights and played with the moonbeams at dawn. Patch found new places to nap and Leela hummed new little tunes that made the sea smile. Visitors who came by boat left with pockets full of starlight and stories about a lighthouse where a ghost tucked in children's dreams and showed sailors the way. The island was full of small, brave things: songs, keys, jingling bells, and warm smiles. On quiet nights, if you visited and sat on the old stone steps, you might hear the lamp's soft tick, Patch's tiny bell, and a far-off sea song that sounded like wind and giggles braided together. Sometimes a little bright spiral of light would dance by your shoulder and whisper, "Hello, friend," before darting back to play. Leela would offer you jam on toast and a mug of tea while Seagull Swoop told silly jokes. You would leave with a pocket full of silver sea reflections and a promise that the light would always be there. So, when you hear a bell far away and a lamp twinkling on a rocky shore, think of the Old Lighthouse and its little friends. Think of Glimmer, who is gentle and brave, of Leela, who is kind and clever, and of Patch, who is brave in quiet ways. Think of the tiny brass key that fit into an old place and the song that reminded metal how to dance. Nights have softer edges there now, and every boat finds its way home by a light that is part flame, part ghost glow, and very much friendship. Jason and the Giant Pumpkin Patch. Jason woke to a crisp morning at Grandpa's farm. He pulled on blue overalls and ran outside to breathe the cool air. Leaves crinkled under his boots and the sky smelled like apples. Mama waved from the kitchen window, and Grandpa tipped his hat, smiling. Jason loved pumpkins more than almost anything, orange round friends that could sit on porches or wear leaves for hats. Today, Grandpa promised a surprise, a walk beyond the hill to a place called the Giant Pumpkin Patch. Jason and Grandpa walked hand in hand down a little path that hummed with the sound of wind. They found a narrow gate stitched with vines and a tiny wooden sign that read Giant Pumpkin Patch. The grass tickled Jason's ankles, and he felt his heart beat like a small drum. Midge, the tiny mouse, darted across a stone, twitching a tiny scarf as if to say hello. The soil smelled warm and sweet, and somewhere far inside the field, a soft glow winked like a secret. They stepped into a hum not loud, but like many small bells. Pumpkins of every size dotted the field, some as tiny as apples, others as big as carts. One pumpkin near the path had a friendly carved smile and gentle eyes that seemed to blink. Jason pressed a small hand to it. "Hello," he whispered. The pumpkin answered with a little rumble and a warm glow. Grandpa chuckled. "That's Poppy," he said. "Poppy loves visitors and songs." Jason grinned and started to sing. The friendly scarecrow nodded from a row of corn stalks, and the golden bee hummed above like a tiny conductor. Around them, pumpkins swayed and softly hummed back when Jason sang. Midge, the tiny mouse, danced across a vine, making Jason clap, and the wheelbarrow leaned patiently by a path. Everyone in the patch seemed to work together. Pumpkins tucked their stems close, vines braided gently, and the moon, high even in daytime, watched like a silver friend. Jason felt he had stepped into a giggling garden. A small seed rolled from a big pumpkin and landed near Jason's shoe. It wobbled like it was shy. Jason picked it up gently and held it against his palm. "We should help it," he said. Grandpa fetched a little patch of soft earth, and Mama brought a warm cup for Grandpa, but left Jason the tiny spade. Together, they planted the seed in the soft ground, speaking kind words as they patted the soil. Poppy glowed brighter, as if giving a tiny thank you wink. Day melted into evening, and lanterns were lit in mason jars on the farmhouse porch. The pumpkins in the patch shimmered like stars on the ground. "Tomorrow is the village parade," Grandpa said, folding his hands. Jason's eyes shone. He imagined a pumpkin big enough to carry music and laughter through town. Poppy rolled a little closer and seemed to nod, as if understanding every wish. Excitement fizzed in Jason's chest like sparkles. He and his new friends began to plan with soft, excited whispers. On parade morning, ribbons fluttered and the festival banner hung proud. The village gathered, chattering and smiling. The plan was simple: decorate Poppy into a friendly float. Villagers tied garlands and tucked ribbons into vines. Jason climbed gently onto Poppy's side to arrange tiny leaf flags, and Midge the tiny mouse placed a little hat on a small pumpkin that rode in the wheelbarrow. The friendly scarecrow led a cheerful chant, and the golden bee zipped about, polishing a shiny leaf like a tiny broom. Then came the big push. Poppy was very heavy, but the whole village grabbed ropes and braced their feet. 1, 2, 3, they sang. Jason clasped Grandpa's hand and gave a giggly shout. The pumpkin rolled slowly, creaking softly like an old wooden door, while laughter and singing filled the air. Children hopped and skipped beside it, and even the moon seemed to lean in to watch. The pace was steady and proud. Every shove was a shared cheer, and Poppy seemed to beam with pride. At the parade center, Poppy rolled like a glowing moon on Earth, and music twirled around every ear. Jason stood tall on a soft cushion of hay, waving to friends, and Poppy's face shone like a lantern. People clapped and danced. Even shy Midge squeaked with delight. The village cheered for kindness and cleverness, for hands that helped and songs that stitched everyone together. Jason felt a warm, buzzy joy ripple through him. All the giggles and helpers made his heart feel like a very full pumpkin. When the stars came out, the giant pumpkin returned to its patch. Villagers tucked small pumpkin lanterns around the vines, and the friendly scarecrow sang a soft good night. Poppy settled back down with a contented glow, and the little seed they planted poked up a tiny green sprout as if to say thank you. Jason yawned, hugged Grandpa, and Mama wrapped a cozy scarf around him. He whispered to Poppy, "I'll come back tomorrow," and Poppy seemed to hum a sleepy promise. Tucked in his bed that night, Jason dreamed of pumpkin songs and rope-pulling parades. In his dream, Poppy winked, and the friendly scarecrow danced with Midge on a tiny stage while the golden bee played a bell. Jason smiled in his sleep and thought about how helping hands and friendly hearts made everything bigger and brighter. The next morning, he knew the patch would be waiting with more stories to hum. He closed his eyes, ready for more adventures with friends who glowed from inside out. The Mermaid Under the Coral Reef. Beneath the wavy blue sea, under a curly coral roof, lived Myra the little mermaid. Her tail flashed coral pink when she twirled. She loved to hum soft songs and collect tiny sea treasures. Every morning, she greeted the reef like a friend. Fish peeked from bright coral windows. Seaweed waved hello like a green curtain. Myra pressed her palm to a tidy rock and smiled. Today the reef felt extra quiet. She wondered whether a new adventure was swimming nearby. Her hairband shell tapped twice, like a tiny asking knock. Myra set off, curious and careful. Nearby, Finn the striped fish bubbled excitedly. He loved to race Myra around coral towers and hide in tiny caves. Finn zipped through arches and puffed playful bubbles that tickled Myra's nose. They played peekaboo with anemone curtains and counted tiny shells on the sand. On a shelf of purple coral, something small winked like a new star. It was a pale shell with a soft golden heart. The glow shell hummed a tiny tune. Myra reached out gently. Fins circled in delight. The quiet reef felt like it had a secret to tell them both. When Myra lifted the little shell, the water filled with a warm, whispery sound. The glow shell glowed like a pocket of sunset. It whispered, not in words that stung, but in gentle sea songs. The reef needs a tiny helping hand. Myra's fingers tingled with a warm friend feeling. Finn bobbed and listened. The shell's light pointed like a finger toward a quiet lane between two coral towers. Myra could feel the reef breathing softly. Something small and sad was waiting. She knew the kind of help that made things shine again. A small, kind, brave try. Myra decided to follow the shell's light. She called to friends, Starry the sea star who hugs coral with steady arms, and Octo the octopus who paints tiny coral sprouts every morning. They gathered beneath a waving fern of seaweed. Starry clapped with 5 bright arms, and Octo waved a paintbrush arm happily. The reef felt like a neighborhood where everyone came out to help. They packed tiny tools, a ribbon, some kelp ties, and a brave song. Finn led with bubbly wiggles. The glow shell glowed brighter, like a little lamp through the reef's leafy streets. The road under the reef wiggled like a friendly maze. Seaweed tickled their fins and made them giggle. Bright fish peeked from holes and offered directions with flutters. They followed tiny footprints of sand and shells that glowed faintly where the glow shell shone. Along the path, they met a shy seahorse who had lost his song. He breathed quiet and tiny. Myra leaned close and hummed a lullaby. Starry held his tail steady. The seahorse blinked, and for a second, he remembered a bright tune about coral birthdays. He brightened and decided to come along. They came to a shadowed nook where colors felt quieter. The glow shell made a soft path of light on the sand. Octo reached out with many arms to help part a curtain of soft feather coral. Tiny shy fish huddled inside, and Myra sang a soft tune. The tunnel smelled like rain after a very small wave. Somewhere deeper, there was a hush, like someone holding their breath. The friends held hands, fins, and arms linked, and moved slowly so the reef would not fright. Together, they were brave in the kindest ways. At the heart of the quiet, they found a tiny coral sprout wrapped in a gray net. The net was small, but it hugged the sprout and made its colors sleep. The reef's breath slowed. Myra's heart fluttered. This felt like the reason the glow shell had shone. Finn zipped around, trying to find an edge. Octo used a clever arm to hold a ribbon while Starry steadied the sprout. Together, they worked slowly and gently. The net did not want to be mean. It was old and tired. With careful tugs and kind words, they loosened a loop. Then, with a soft, joyful pull and a tiny cheer, the net slipped free. The coral sprout stretched like it woke from a long nap. Colors poured back, pink, gold, and tender green, like paint spilled in the nicest way. The reef breathed deep and sang tiny sparkles of sound. The seahorse sang a bright note that rolled like a pearl. Myra clapped with her hand and tail. Finn made a bubble crown. Octo painted a stripe of bright blue on a shell. Starry gave the sprout a 5-arm hug. The water felt full of thank you lights. The glow shell hummed a happy song and floated back to its small bed in a purple coral nook. Myra thought it wanted to rest where it would be safe and warm. They tucked it in gently, and the little shell gave a last golden wink. The reef glowed like a patchwork blanket. Old fish came out and told small thank you stories. Even the seaweed waved slower now, as if yawning. Myra learned that tiny hands and brave little friends could fix big-sounding problems. Finn bumped her tail in a silly hug. The reef felt like a house everyone loved. That night, the waves hummed a soft bedtime song. Stars above the sea peeked through the water like shy silver buttons. Myra curled on a sleepy sandbank with Finn curled near her fin. Octo painted a sleepy picture for the reef, and Starry rested on a warm coral branch. The reef told quiet jokes in bubble whispers and promised to keep each other safe. The glowshell glowed faintly, like a night lamp. Myra closed her eyes and thought of how small kindnesses glow for a long time. She dreamed of tomorrow's little adventures and the friends she would meet again. The starfish that could grant wishes. Sunny loved the beach. Every morning, she hurried to the sand with a tiny red bucket and bright curiosity in her eyes. She built small castles, collected shiny shells, and listened to the ocean's long, gentle stories. One evening, just as the sun folded into the sea and the sky turned a sleepy lavender, Sunny found something that shimmered beneath a small wave. Nestled on a soft patch of sand was a starfish that glowed like a little firefly. Its name was Willa, and when Willa blinked, the tiny lights along her arms winked back like friendly stars. Willa spoke in a whisper that sounded a little like the sea itself. She said she could grant 3 gentle wishes, but they must be kind and small, meant to help. Sunny's eyes grew wide. She had never held a real wish before. Just then, Click the crab scuttled over, tapping shells like a tiny drumbeat, and Seafoam the seagull landed with a shiny ribbon in her beak. Willa nudged a pearly pouch toward Sunny. Inside lay 3 colorful shells, each humming softly, waiting for the right kind of wish to wake them. Sunny thought about big wishes like heaps of candy or flying high, but Willa whispered again about kindness. Right then, Sunny remembered her friend Tom's kite, lost the week before in a windy chase. The kite had been gray and brave, and Tom missed the way it danced. Sunny wished quietly, "I wish we could find Tom's kite and make it fly again." Willa touched the pearly shell, and it hummed like a tiny bell. The wish floated into the evening air like a soft feather, and the tide listened and nodded as if it understood perfectly. The sand shivered, and a far-off flutter answered. Seafoam swooped up, glinting in the fading sun, and Click scuttled toward a driftwood hill. There, tangled and sleepy, the kite lay with a knot of seaweed and a bit of ribbon. Sunny giggled and pulled it free, its colors brightening like a smile. With Willa's shell glowing warm, the kite lifted easily into the breeze. Tom's laughter sailed across the dunes, and Sunny felt a warm glow in her chest. The first wish had been small, true, and full of joy for a friend. That night, the friends walked toward the crooked Old Lighthouse to watch the moon. The lamp in the lighthouse flickered sadly, and the keeper's lantern was dim. Moonbeam, the gentle tide, whispered that the light had been lonely for a long while. Sunny hugged her red bucket and listened. She remembered sailors and boats that might need a bright eye on a dark night. Willa's shells glowed like distant fireflies. Sunny asked, softly, if wishes could mend things that helped everyone, and Willa's glow grew steady and kind. For the second wish, Sunny chose to make the lighthouse shine like a friendly star. Willa touched a second shell, and the light in the tower blinked awake, like a sleepy friend stretching. A ripple of silver moved through the water, and the keeper's smile returned as the light turned steady and bright. Boats bobbed safely, and lanterns in windows swelled with relief. Click tapped a happy rhythm on the railing, and seafoam circled above, scattering tiny flecks of sea sparkle. The shore sang a soft thank you, and Sunny felt proud that a wish could help so many. When the second shell dimmed, Willa's voice was softer. Only one wish remained, and it felt very important. Sunny sat and thought of many small things she wanted: a new shovel, a perfect sandcastle, or a mountain of cookies. She looked at the sea and remembered the tiny tide pools where crabs, anemones, and shy little fishes lived. Litter had crept into those pools after a big, windy storm. Sunny's heart tugged. She realized she wanted the last wish to do something big and gentle for all the small sea friends she had met. Sunny took a deep breath and whispered the last wish. She wished for the tide pools to be clean and safe, so every tiny creature could dance and hide and sing. Willa touched the final shell, and a silver sigh slipped into the water. Tiny currents began to sweep gently, lifting unwanted ribbons and bits of plastic away and carrying them to a helpful place. Little anemones unfurled like soft flowers, and small fish flashed happy silver. The shore hummed with life again. This wish was big in heart but quiet and careful, and the whole beach seemed to breathe with relief. After the wishes, Willa's glow changed. She was still magical, but her gift shifted into something new, a soft remembering of how to notice kindness and share it. Willa gave Sunny a small, plain shell from the empty pouch and said it would help Sunny remember the gentle power of helping others every day. Click clicked his claws merrily, and Seafoam left a tiny, shiny ribbon for Sunny to tie on her bucket. The lighthouse winked from the hill, and the moon hung like a friendly guard. They all felt the warm truth that small acts can sparkle like big wishes. Sunny walked home with a heart full of bright little lights. She had 3 wishes, and together they had done 3 kind things: find a kite, light a lighthouse, and heal a tide pool. That night she slept to the sound of waves and a small shell by her pillow that reminded her of Willa's lesson. In the days after, Sunny noticed chances to be kind: a hand to help a friend, a picked-up bit of trash, a cheerful hello, and each small kindness felt a little like a wish made again. Willa shimmered on the shore, a quiet star among stars. The King Who Couldn't Stop Laughing. Once upon a sunny morning in the little kingdom of Tickleton, the sun smiled and the breeze played hopscotch across the flags. At the top of the tall, honey-colored castle lived King Laugh. He loved to laugh. His laugh began as a gentle chime, like soft bells, and it filled the rooms. The servants would smile and the cooks would hum. Children peeked from windows and clapped. Everyone liked the king's laughter because it sounded like warm oatmeal and bright marbles. One day, the king's laugh grew a little louder. It rolled down the stairway, bounced off the tapestries, and tickled the armor. The armor soldiers giggled so hard their helmets wobbled. The royal baker dropped a tray of sticky honey buns and laughed as the buns stuck to his nose. Even the castle cat tried to purr in laughing rhythm. Each laugh made another laugh bounce back, and soon the halls were full of happy, hiccupy sounds. The jester, Jumpy Jester, loved jokes and tried new tricks to giggle the king more. He juggled tiny teacups and told fluffy tickle rhymes. The king laughed so much that his chair hummed. But something surprising happened. The garden outside began to giggle too. Flowers swayed and made tiny chuckles. Butterflies fluttered in funny circles. Birds turned their heads and twittered like they were telling jokes of their own. Laughter had crossed the castle walls into the wide, green world. Queen Myra brought a silver teacup and smiled softly as she watched the kingdom ripple with laughter. She brewed a tiny cup of calming mint for the king, hoping he might rest between chuckles. The cup smelled like sleepy leaves. The king took a sip and let out a small, tinkly giggle that sounded like a bell. Yet the giggle grew back into a bigger one, as if a little spark lived under his crown and tickled him from inside. Court Mouse Mary, small and brave, scurried through the castle, following the sound of laughter like a ribbon. She wore a tiny blue scarf and peeped under rugs and behind curtains. Mary heard a faint shimmy under the throne. She found a little pebble that shimmered like a sunbeam trapped in glass. When she tapped it, the pebble gave a playful tinkle. Mary thought the pebble might be a giggle stone, a tiny laugh seed, and she tucked it in her pocket to show the queen. Word traveled fast to the townsfolk. People brought tickle toys, feather hats, and silly songs to the castle, hoping to join the laughter. Even the baker's dog learned to woof in rhythm. The laughing bell in the courtyard, old and polished, rang soft giggles when birds brushed its rope. The kingdom filled with a marvelous, noisy joy. But soon, giggles tucked inside hiccups. Hiccups grew into rolling guffaws, and the giggles began to tumble out of control like a tumble of bright marbles. At lunchtime, the laughter made the plates clink, and the stew spilled tiny giggles into the bowls. The children bounced with each chuckle and accidentally hopped like frogs. A small pond nearby began to giggle too, making fish flip in merry circles. People found it hard to speak because a funny hiccup of laughter popped in after every sentence. The mayor tried to make a serious face, but his chin wobbled and the whole room went peal after peal of laughter again. The kingdom loved laughter, yet now it grew too big to tuck away. Bells chimed giggles that rolled down hills and tickled the sleepy cows. The mill's sails hummed in laughter, and the bread rose in puffy giggles. Some people wanted quiet to nap and to hear the whisper of the wind. They wished for a gentle lullaby to soften the laughing waves. Queen Myra gently suggested a quiet game they could all play together to help the kingdom breathe and listen. The queen taught everyone a simple game called Hold Then Share. First, everyone took a deep, soft breath and held the laugh like a little balloon. Then they let it out with a gentle puff that turned into a shared giggle. Children practiced, and the mayor managed a tiny, quiet smile without bursting. The game made space for the laughter and room for calm. The kingdom learned how to wrap a laugh like a warm blanket and then tuck it in so others could sleep. But the tiny pebble in Mouse Mary's pocket still shimmered. One starry evening, when the moon told a sleepy story, the pebble sneezed a little sparkle and popped right out. It floated up like a firefly and landed on the king's ruby at the crown's tip. A bright, bubbly laugh puffed out, louder than before. The castle began to tremble with a giggle burst so big that curtains danced and cups did a little cha-cha on saucers. The whole kingdom felt like it was on a laughter carousel. This time the laugh was a laugh storm. Giggles thundered in peals and peals like a merry storm cloud. Trees shook tiny chuckling leaves, and the sea nearby patted the shore in rhythm. The jester somersaulted and made funny faces that only made the storm giggle louder. The kingdom whooped and woo-hooed until their tummies ached with joy. It was the biggest, silliest noise Tickleton had ever heard, and it felt like everyone's toes were laughing too. At the very loudest moment, the moon stepped closer and blinked kindly at the kingdom. Her voice was soft as spilled milk, and she hummed a lullaby. The sound slipped through the laugh storm like a gentle finger and touched the pebble on the crown. The pebble sighed and glowed. King Laugh felt the laughter settle like soft feathers. He learned, in a hush wrapped by moonlight, how to hold a laugh in his hands and let it go like a tiny, pleased bird. The next morning, the kingdom woke to gentle giggles and warm yawns. People remembered the hold then share game and practiced with their friends. The king would laugh at the funny parts of his day and then breathe the rest away. Jumpy Jester learned a quiet joke that made only 2 people giggle so they could save it for bedtime. Court Mouse Miri kept the pebble safe in a tiny velvet pouch so it could sparkle sometimes, but not take over the day. From then on, Tickleton found a new kind of happy. There were loud laughter parades and quiet, giggly story times. The Garden of Giggles would chuckle with visitors and then settle into gentle sways. The laughing bell rang soft notes to remind folks to play the hold then share game. People brought silly hats and soft pillows to town festivals, and the king led the parades with a smile that could be big or small, whichever the moment needed. At bedtime, the king would sit by the window and the queen would cup his hand. Sometimes he told a tiny joke and they both laughed like little marbles. Sometimes they listened to the moon and didn't laugh at all. Court Mouse Miri curled in the pocket of his robe and sometimes sneezed a spark that made them smile in the dark. The kingdom slept, dreaming of gentle chuckles, and the castle hummed a soft little tune that sounded like the king's breathing. Children in Tickleton learned that laughter is like a kite. It flies highest when you share the string. They learned to tickle each other gently, to giggle and to hush, to be loud in play and soft when someone needed a nap. The king taught them to be proud of a giggle and brave enough to whisper a laugh away when it was time. The kingdom kept its sparkly joy, but it learned to wrap it in a kind, careful hug. And so King Laugh kept laughing, but now he laughed for the right moments and shared his laughter like warm cookies. Sometimes, on a very silly afternoon, he would laugh until his crown tipped sideways and the whole castle tittered. The kingdom would clap and join in, then settle down with a happy hush. Tickleton became famous for its kind, clever laughter that could cheer a friend or calm a child, and that made the king smile and then laugh a soft, proud laugh. The monster under the bed's big surprise. Every night when the lights go down and the moon paints the carpet with silver stripes, Pip pulls the blanket up to the chin and listens. There is a tiny thump, a whispery rumble, then a small sound like someone counting socks. Pip thinks, what if there is a monster under the bed? This thought wiggles like a tickle. Pip imagines scary shadows, big teeth, and thunderous roars, but the house smells like warm toast and safe bedtime instead. Night after night, Pip pretends to sleep with one eye open. Little noises come from under the bed. a shuffle, a soft humming, a tiny tap like someone placing a cup. Pip listens closely and hears muffled singing, 2 notes, then 3. The singing is silly, not scary. It sounds like someone practicing a song about socks and spoons. Pip wiggles the toes and thinks, maybe a tiny friend lives there. Pip imagines what a tiny friend might like for a snack. One night, Pip decides to check. Quiet as a mouse, Pip slides off the bed and kneels down. The air smells like warm cinnamon and clean laundry. Pip leans closer and whispers, "Hello?" The whisper returns in a soft echo, "Hello, Pip." A tiny face with twinkling eyes peeks from the dark. It is not teethy or scary. It is round and furry with little horns and a shy grin. The monster says its name in a small voice, "I am Muffin." Muffin waves a sticky paw and holds a tiny paper hat. Muffin is not a scary monster at all. Muffin tiptoes in socks and collects lost things, single socks, toy spoons, tiny paper crowns. Muffin hums softly and arranges treasures on a little mat under the bed. Pip giggles. Muffin's favorite game is making a missing sock parade. Each sock gets its own drum roll and little bow. Muffin lines them up, polishes them with a puff of giggle sneeze, and gives them names like Mr. Stripe and Twinkle Toes. Pip claps so softly the moon giggles. Muffin loves parties. Tiny, quiet parties with cozy blankets and crumb-sized cakes. Muffin practices party songs all night, trying out silly words and funny drum beats with an old bottle cap. Pip listens to Muffin's careful practice and learns the chorus. Clap your paws, clap your toes, twirl your hat, and wiggle your nose. Muffin bows to an imaginary audience and blushes blue. Sometimes Muffin forgets to be quiet, and Pip laughs so hard the room shakes like a giggling jelly. Pip decides to help with the big surprise. SHHH, Pip whispers and reaches into the toy box for a paper hat. Together, they fold tiny hats from the last page of a storybook. Muffin giggles and ties a tiny ribbon around a sock. The two of them color a banner with crayon stars and hang it on a string made of floss. Muffin makes a list: 1 hat, 1 sock stage, 1 soft drum, and 1 guest, Pip. Pip feels brave and excited, heart thumping like a little frog. The next night, Muffin whispers that the big surprise will happen when the clock shows sleepy 12. Pip pretends to snore with great gusto and waits. Muffin scurries. Soft feet patter on the floor, tiny lamps flicker, and the banner floats up like a shy cloud. Then Muffin taps Pip's foot. Now, Pip blinks and sees the room gently glow. Little cookie crumbs are arranged into a heart. The striped sock is on a tiny pedestal, and a paper hat sits on Teddy Bear's head. Pip feels warm all over. Suddenly, Muffin begins the party song with the practiced chorus. Pip claps paws and toes, well, hands and toes. They tap the bottle cap drum and march in a slow, wobbly parade around the bed. Muffin leads, wobbling with proud, tiny stomps while Pip hums along. The moon leans close to listen. Even Teddy Bear bounces his stitched knee. Outside, the color of the night seems to hum along in soft blues and sleepy pinks. The room feels like a giggle wrapped in a blanket. At the end of the parade, Muffin presents the biggest surprise of all. Muffin hands Pip a tiny box tied with a crumbly ribbon. Inside is the missing sock, clean, starry, and smiling as if it had been on a very good trip. Pip blinks and hugs the sock to the chest. Muffin says, "I found it on the laundry line road." Pip laughs and thanks Muffin with the biggest, slobbery hug a tiny person can give. Muffin blushes teal and giggles until the giggles turn to sleepy yawns. Morning comes with a gentle tippy-tap of sunlight. Pip wakes with a smile and sees the banner drooping like a sleepy flower and the tiny hats in a cozy pile. The sock sits proudly on the bedside table. Pip tells the family about the monster under the bed. Pip's voice is bright and brave. Muffin is my friend. The family laughs, brings a muffin, real, sweet, and warm for the tiny guest, and helps Pip leave a small note by the bed that says, "Thank you, Muffin." Muffin peeks out one last time, shy and proud. Muffin leaves quietly when the house is awake, carrying tiny crumbs and a little bundle of giggle dust. Pip waves and promises to visit every night. Sometimes they leave a single cookie on the mat, and sometimes a crayon drawing. The house keeps both secrets and smiles. Pip learns that not every monster is scary. Some are helpers of lost things, keepers of quiet parties, and best of all, friends who love tiny surprises. That night, as Pip pulls the blanket tight and the moon hums outside the window, Pip feels a soft bump under the bed, the sound of socks practicing their bows. Pip smiles wide and whispers into the pillow, "Good night, Muffin." Under the bed, a small voice answers sleepily, "Good night, Pip." The big surprise was not that a monster lived there, but that the monster was a friend with party plans, kind paws, and a very good memory for missing socks. Pip drifts to sleep on a cloud of giggles. Penny and the Pirate Parrot. Penny liked the wind on the beach. She liked the sand between her toes and the little wooden boat she carried each day. Today the sky was high and a giggle came from the driftwood sign. Sitting on the sign was a bright parrot with a tiny red bandana and one missing golden feather. He bobbed and clicked his beak. "Ahoy!" he squawked in a sing-song voice. Penny blinked, smiled, and tipped her toy boat toward him. The parrot fluffed his feathers and said, "Pip, Pip, treasure." Penny laughed and sat down in the sand to listen. Pip the pirate parrot hopped down with a soft cluck. He picked up a tiny, crinkled paper with his beak and nudged it toward Penny. The paper rolled open and showed a little map with a red X, wavy blue lines, and a picture of a smiling shell. "Follow the giggle, follow the sand," Pip chirped, tapping the map with his wing. Penny's eyes grew wide. She loved maps. She loved giggles. She folded the map into her pocket, took her boat, and whispered, "Shall we, Pip?" Pip replied with a happy squawk, and they began to walk, tiny footprints in the warm sand. They walked past a puddle that shone like a little mirror. Penny set her toy boat in the water and Pip tapped the tiny sail, making it sing. A shell on the shore opened just a bit and hummed a soft tune. "Hello," the shell whispered. It liked songs, it liked friends, and it gave them a clue. "Follow the laughing gull to the sleepy cave." Off they went, Penny carrying the boat and Pip flapping with excitement. The gull above giggled and danced in the breeze. The beach felt as if it were clapping along with them. The laughing gull led them along a path of smooth stones. Each stone had a tiny sparkle, like a star caught on the shore. A friendly orange starfish waved a little arm and pointed down a narrow way between two dunes. This way," it hummed in a tiny voice. Penny thanked the starfish and tucked the map back into her pocket. They passed seaweed curtains that brushed their knees and a small rock pool where silver fish peeked up to say hello. Pip preened and repeated the fish's bubbly whispers. and Penny grinned at the busy sea friends. When they reached the sleepy cave, the entrance yawned like a big mouth made of shells. The cave smelled of salt and warm sand. Inside, the light was dappled and warm, and little glowing pebbles lined the path. A tiny fiddling crab sat on a rock, stroking a small violin and humming a slow tune. He stopped and winked at them. "Ah, visitors," he clacked, playing a few cheerful notes. "If you need music to find your way, just listen to the tune and step when it sways." Penny tapped her foot and followed the melody, fingers holding Pip's soft wing. Deeper in the cave, a gentle breeze whooshed past and made a little bell of shells chime. The map in Penny's pocket felt warm, and when she opened it, a new drawing appeared, a tiny hill with a single tall dune and a golden shimmer on top. "The golden feather," Pip croaked. He puffed up, almost glowing with hopeful excitement. Penny clutched the map and hopped across stepping stones of sand. They climbed the short sand hill together, laughing as the wind ruffled Penny's hair and tickled Pip's feathers, until both of them couldn't stop giggling. At the very top of the dune, a tiny bird's nest sat tucked into the sand like a secret. There, half buried in soft shells, was a single golden feather that shimmered like a small sun. Pip's eyes widened until they glowed like two tiny lanterns. He hopped up, and gently picked the feather. It felt warm and made a whispering sound, like a lullaby from the sea. Pip pressed the feather to his chest and remembered a cozy island where he once learned to sing. Penny clapped softly. The feather was more than pretty. It felt like home. Suddenly, the sand nearby shifted and a small cloud of giggles floated up. A tiny pirate, gentle as a whisper, peeked from behind a rock. He wore a floppy hat and a smile, and his eyes searched the sky. He looked a bit lost. "Oh, my hat," he sighed. Penny noticed it was a very familiar hat, woven with tiny shells and a faded ribbon. The gentle pirate's voice was soft and a little shaky. Pip flew over and offered the golden feather. The pirate's eyes lit up. "My hat, my song." He sang, thanking them with a grateful little bow. The pirate sat and told a quiet story of long ago when he learned to whistle with the waves. He had been looking for his lost hat and a song to remember. Pip listened, feather tucked close, and Penny listened with both hands cupped to her ears as if catching notes. The pirate hummed a little tune, the fiddling crab added a soft violin, and the shell chimes answered. Together, they made a gentle song that sounded like sea wind and bedtime. The cave smiled, the pebbles glowed, and everyone felt snug and brave all at once. When the song finished, the pirate tapped his hat and found a tiny drawing sewn into its ribbon, a little chest with a heart. "Maybe the real treasure is what we make together," he smiled. Penny thought of all the laughs, the music, and Pip's remembered island. Pip tucked the golden feather behind his wing and gave a proud parrot strut. The pirate led them to a small patch of sand where a tiny sparkling chest sat half hidden beneath a pile of shells. It chimed gently as if it already held a few songs inside. Penny opened the chest with careful, excited hands. Inside were shiny shells that sang when touched, a small mirror that made everyone smile, soft ribbons, and a handful of bright marbles that rolled like tiny planets. Each shell sang a tiny note, and together they made a happy, tinkling song. Pip found a tiny patch that fit the golden feather perfectly and sewed it in with a bit of salty thread. The pirate placed his hat on the chest and tapped it like a drum. "Treasure." They all cheered in a gentle, giggly way. They decided the treasure was for sharing. Penny took a marbled bead and gave it to the fiddling crab. The crab danced and played a sprightlier tune that made the pebbles sparkle. The starfish received a shiny shell and made it glow brighter on her rock. Pip tucked the golden feather into his wing where it would be safe and warm. The pirate tied a ribbon around his hat and declared the beach the Friends' Cove, a place for songs and kind things. Penny felt her heart tingle like the tiny bells in the cave. The sun began to bend toward the ocean like a sleepy orange ball. Shadows grew long, and the sea turned a soft, sleepy blue. Penny gathered her toy boat and tucked the map gently into her pocket. Pip hopped on her shoulder, feather catching the last golden light. The pirate waved his hand and promised to listen for their songs whenever the wind came singing. The fiddling crab played a slow, happy tune that sounded like a bedtime story. Penny yawned a little, feeling sleepy and very full of adventure and friends. On the walk back, Penny and Pip stopped to help a tiny lost fish find a deep puddle. They hummed a little tune and the fish flicked its tail in thanks. The gull above did a slow, lazy circle and the starfish waved goodnight. Pip told silly pirate jokes that made Penny giggle until she hiccuped. Each hiccup sounded like a tiny drum beat. The beach had become full of quiet music, like a soft blanket. Penny felt brave with sand on her knees and the gentle parrot at her side. When they reached Penny's little cottage at the edge of the beach, Mum was waiting with a warm towel and 2 mugs of warm milk, one for Penny and a tiny dish of seed and crumbs for Pip. Penny showed Mum the map and the golden feather and told the story with big hand gestures and small, happy squeaks from Pip. Mum laughed and tucked a blanket under Penny's chin. Pip curled his head under his wing on Penny's shoulder, feather safe and warm. The house smelled of baking, and the day felt like a ribbon tied around their shoulders. As night came, Penny's bedroom glowed with a small lamp and the whisper of the sea. Pip told one last parrot tale, a tiny story about an island that hummed lullabies. Penny listened with eyes half closed and held the little mirror that had made everyone smile. She whispered thank you to Pip and the pirate in the cave and to the fiddling crab who played that gentle tune. Pip clicked his beak softly and settled down. Outside, the moon climbed on its ladder of stars and the beach hummed a soft, sleepy song. Before Penny drifted fully to sleep, she dreamed of new maps and small, laughing gulls. In her dream, Pip led a parade of sea friends along the shore, each carrying a tiny treasure to share. The pirate clapped his hands and the fiddling crab played faster but gentle songs. The golden feather shone like a little moon on Pip's wing. Penny smiled in her sleep and hugged her toy boat like a friend. The dream promised more gentle adventures tomorrow, with new laughs, new songs, and more friends waiting on the sand. When morning came, Penny woke with sand still in her hair from the day before, though she had been snug in bed all night. Pip stretched and gave a cheerful squawk, as if to say, "Are you ready?" Penny kissed Pip on his head and looked out the window. The sea sparkled like tiny coins. She knew the map would always be there, and the chest of songs could be opened again and shared with anyone who needed a smile. Penny and Pip promised to visit the Friends' Cove whenever the sun was playful and the wind wanted to sing. So Penny and the pirate parrot set off again, sometimes for a puddle, sometimes for a song, and sometimes just to find a new, tiny treasure to share. The beach remembered their footsteps and the gulls remembered their tunes. The golden feather glowed when Pip laughed, and Penny's little wooden boat had many voyages, even on puddles at home. Every day brought a small, shiny moment of friendship, a new note to hum, and the warm feeling of knowing that treasure can be as simple as a song shared between two friends. Little Bear's Big Winter Adventure. Little Bear woke to a hush. The world outside his window was white and quiet, as if someone had painted the ground with milk. He pressed his nose to the glass and watched tiny snowflakes tumble from the sky, each one winking in the morning light. His heart did a happy hop. Today would be a big winter day, he decided. He could feel adventure rustling like the scarf his mother kept near the door. Little Bear put on his boots and padded outside, where every twig and rock wore a glittering hat of snow. He wrapped the red scarf snug around his neck, its bright color like a little flag against the white. Little Bear took 3 big breaths of cold, sweet air and imagined the wishes he would make on each snowflake. He thought of crunchy footprints, sliding down gentle hills, and building a new friend from snow. The trees were tall and hushed. Each evergreen wore its best snowy coat. Little Bear hummed a happy tune, ready to find friends and make the hill ring with laughter. Outside, the path crunched under his paws and a tiny blue blur fluttered above his shoulder. Bluebird landed with a ruffle and chirped a bright hello. Little Bear smiled and offered a crumb of his breakfast bread, which Bluebird pecked with quick, happy beeps. Together, they scouted the yard. Bluebird pointed with a bob to a sweet little hollow where a pinecone lay. They set off, Little Bear's boots making soft thumps and Bluebird singing a tinkly tune, the snow sparkling like a million tiny mirrors. Not far away, Snowy Fox was busy patting small snow lumps into shape. When Little Bear arrived, Snowy Fox tossed a soft snowball and giggled. The 3 friends worked side by side, stacking fluffy rounds and packing them carefully to make a snow bear with button eyes and a twig smile. Bluebird chose a shiny pebble for a nose. Little Bear's laughter made puffs in the air, and Snowy Fox's tail made gentle swirls in the snow. The new snow bear seemed to grin right back at them. Then, tucked beneath an evergreen branch, they found a small wooden sled with a playful stripe. It shone like a promise. Little Bear's paws tingled with excitement. Snowy Fox hopped on and let out a happy yip. Bluebird fluttered above, and Little Bear pushed with all his might. The sled slid and sang over the snow, carrying them toward the top of a friendly hill. They climbed and scrambled and wiggled into place, ready to whoosh. The hill seemed to lean in, eager to send them down. Away they went. The sled whooshed like wind through laundry, and laughter bubbled out of each of them. Snow sprayed like confetti, and for a wild, wonderful second, the whole world tasted only of speed and joy. Little Bear felt his tummy flip in the best possible way. At the bottom of the hill, they tumbled into a snowdrift in a flurry of giggles and soft snorts. They scrambled up, cheeks bright and eyes sparkling, and decided to climb again for another run and another round of happy whoops. After a few slides, Little Bear noticed a single sparkling snowflake twirling differently from the rest. It spun in circles like a tiny dancer and seemed to glow with its own soft light. Curious, Little Bear reached a paw and followed it as it drifted away, twirling past icicles and over frosted branches. Bluebird flitted after for a moment, but the snowflake's gentle path led Little Bear farther than he meant to go. He did not yet know he was wandering away from the friends who laughed on the hill. The snowflake guided him past a row of tall evergreens until the hill looked small behind him. Little Bear blinked and realized the sounds of sliding and laughter were very faint now. The wind sounded different here, whispering through branches and making long, quiet sighs. He paused, and his brave heart felt a tiny wobble. The sky seemed very wide. Little Bear called softly, "Snowy Fox, Bluebird." His voice puffed like a little thought in the cold air, and the forest answered only with soft echoes. Just then, a small, worried sound drifted from a hollow under a tree. Little Bear leaned closer and found Snowy Fox's paw caught beneath a drift of soft snow. Snowy Fox's ears peeped out, eyes wide and a little scared. Bluebird hovered nearby, fluttering fast but too small to push. Little Bear's worry changed into a steady, determined warmth. He remembered how Mama Bear bandaged tiny scrapes and how the red scarf could tie things together. Little Bear knew it was time to help a friend. With careful paws, Little Bear used the sled as a little shovel, scraping away at the drift. Snow flew, and his breath puffed like small clouds. Snowy Fox squeezed a paw free and gave a tiny yelp, then wriggled out with a triumphant hop. Bluebird cheered with a tiny chirpy song. They hugged, all three squishy and giggling, a warm bundle of fur and feathers. Little Bear felt proud and strong, like a moonbeam that had found its way through clouds to help a friend. They all walked back together, the hill welcoming them home like an old friend. In the distance, a gentle lantern glow bobbed. Mama Bear stood at the path with open arms, her smile wrapping around them like the coziest blanket. She led them to the little cabin where steaming cups waited, the scent of cocoa and warm bread filling the air. They talked about the snow bear, the bright sled, and the twirling snowflake, and how Little Bear had been brave and kind. Mama Bear tucked the red scarf into a safe place. That night, Little Bear snuggled into his bed with the red scarf folded on the chair and the window showing a quiet sky. Snowflakes drifted like sleepy dancers outside, each one a tiny secret. He yawned a big, satisfied yawn and thought of the day's sliding, the snow bear's crooked twig smile, and the sparkle that had led him to help a friend. He felt sleepy and full of gentle pride. Mama Bear kissed his forehead, the lantern hummed low, and Little Bear fell asleep dreaming of snowflake dances and tomorrow's small, bright adventures. The Robot Explorer of Planet X. Robo arrived on Planet X with a soft puff from his tiny blue jetpack. His round metal belly hummed with curiosity, and his big friendly eyes blinked like lanterns. The purple and teal hills rolled away under a sky dotted with smiling moons, and glitter drifted on the breeze. Robo carefully unfolded his crinkly silver star map. The glowing stickers winked like little stars. He took a careful hop, checked his map, and whispered hello to the windy, wonderful world he was ready to explore. A happy bounce announced Fluff, the friendly alien pup, who tumbled from behind a sparkle-shaped boulder. Fluff's 3 ears perked up and the star-shaped tail wagged 100 tiny sparkles into the air. Robo's eyes widened with delight. He beeped a little hello and Fluff answered with a joyful bark that sounded almost like a tiny bell. They sniffed with polite robot and pup curiosity, then flopped down together on a soft patch of glittery grass to plan what to see first on Planet X. Hand and paw, they wandered toward the sparkle trees. whose glowing leaves chimed softly like tiny bells. The trees twisted and shimmered, their branches making little music every time the breeze moved. Light sprinkled across Robo's metal head and warmed his circuits with happy twinkles. Fluff hopped around the tree trunks in playful circles, and together they listened to the leaves sing. Tiny notes seemed to float down like confetti, and Robo decided Planet X had the friendliest music he had ever heard. A soft hum joined the chimes, and a little moonbug bounced into view. The moonbug's sparkly shell shimmered like a tiny disco ball, and its curious antennae tickled the air. It hopped up to Robo, tapped his foot, and made a friendly rumbling sound. Fluff tried to copy the hum with a tiny woof, and the moonbug seemed delighted. The three of them exchanged quiet greetings, each new sound folding into the next like a gentle puzzle being put together with giggles. Near the trees, they found a path of glow stones, smooth pebbles pulsing faint blue, pink, and gold. Each step brightened the path a little more, guiding them forward like tiny lanterns. Robo loved the gentle shimmer and carefully hummed to match the stone's pulse. Fluff pranced, leaving tiny paw prints that glowed for a moment and then faded like jokes told and giggled away. Together, they decided to follow the glowing trail, thinking it might lead to a special place on Planet X. A playful gust of wind whooshed down from a smiling moon, and oh no, the crinkly silver star map slipped from Robo's hands. The map twirled like a bird, stickers sparkling, and floated away toward a hilltop. Robo zipped his jetpack, but the wind was faster. Fluff leapt, the moonbug hopped, and the map danced over a ribbon of comet blue air. For a moment, everyone held their breath, hearts a little fluttery, then they whooped together and chased after the runaway map. They chased the map across rolling hills and under low cloud pillows. The sugar comet kite suddenly appeared, its bright ribbons snagging the map for a second before flapping free. The kite's ribbons trailed giggle light and swirled above them like a colorful comet. Robo reached up, Fluff jumped, and the moonbug did a heroic hop, but the wind played tag and kept the map just out of reach. Still, nobody felt upset. Planet X liked games, and the friends loved to play along. They climbed a glittery hill where the wind sang louder, and the kite did a looping dance. Robo puffed his jetpack for a helping hop, Fluff hopped higher with a giggle, and the moonbug performed a tiny flip that made everyone laugh. At the top, the map fluttered down and caught on a sparkle tree branch. It dangled like a silver leaf, stickers blinking shyly. Together, they hatched a gentle plan. Use kindness, cleverness, and a little wiggle to get the map down. Robo extended his arm carefully while Fluff stood on a soft rock to reach a little higher. The moonbug climbed onto Robo's arm like a brave, tiny climber. The tree's glowing leaves chimed encouragement as a small shower of sparkles fell. With a soft tug and a polite beep, the map came free and floated down into Robo's hands. Everyone cheered with happy little noises. Wheels whirred, paws patted, antennae twinkled. The map was safe, and the friends felt proud of their gentle teamwork. They spread the map on a warm patch of grass and saw a new sticker glowing softly where they had just been. The glow made little pictures dance, a tree chime song, a trail of glowing pebbles, and a tiny star that looked like Fluff's tail. Robo marked the spot with a proud beep and added a sticker of a smiling moon. They planned more places to visit, more trees, secrets behind glittery rocks, and where the kite liked to loop. Adventure tasted like warm cocoa and giggles. Night began to curl over Planet X like a sleepy blanket, and the glow stones lit their path like friendly nightlights. Robo's eyes softened to a gentle glow as the moons smiled down. Fluff curled up with a little woof of contentment, and the moonbug tucked under a leaf that chimed a soft lullaby. Robo hummed a tiny tune and kept watch while his new friends slept, feeling warm inside even though he was made of metal. The planet hummed back a slow, happy song. Before bed, Robo gave Fluff a small sticker from his map to remember the day. Fluff's tail wagged like a tiny comet. They promised to find more adventures tomorrow and to always help each other. Robo whispered about faraway places he would one day show Fluff, and Fluff answered with a sleepy bark that meant, "Yes, please." The moonbug hummed the map's sticker spot into a tiny lullaby, and the friends drifted into sleep under the smiling moons and glittering hills. Morning unfurled like a ribbon of comet-pink light, and Robo checked his star map with a twinkle. Today, he would explore a shiny cave and then a valley where clouds played hide. Fluff hopped up with bright eyes, and the moonbug stretched its antennae in a happy wiggle. Together, they tasted dandelion sparkle petals for breakfast and giggled at bubble-shaped clouds. Planet X hummed around them, and Robo felt as if every small moment was a new, bright treasure to store in his memory banks. As the day closed on their week's worth of short adventures, Robo packed his little silver map with care. He had new stickers, new songs, and a heart full of friendshine. Fluff gave one last bounding hug, and the moonbug tapped Robo's wheel with a tiny drumbeat of goodbye. Robo puffed his jetpack for a gentle lift and promised, with a beepy little vow, to return. Planet X waved its glittery hills and smiling moons, and the friends waved back, already dreaming of tomorrow's play. Robo floated up, the tiny blue jetpack making soft puffs, while Fluff chased his shadow until it disappeared over a purple crest. The moonbug performed a cheerful flip and scattered a last shower of sparkles. Robo looked down at the sleepy planet he would remember forever, its chiming trees, pulsing stones, and the friends who taught him games and songs. He tucked the crinkly map into his chest with care, hummed a happy goodbye, and set his compass for home, heart full and beeps bright. Back in his little ship, Robo looked once more at the glowing sticker that showed Planet X he thought of the chime leaves, the playful wind, the sugar comet kite, and all the tiny kindnesses. He promised to come back with more snacks, more songs, and a bigger kite so Fluff could fly it next time. Robot and Planet were connected not just by maps, but by the giggles they left behind. And somewhere on Planet X, a pup and a moonbug dreamed of their next hello. The Secret Library of Spells. Pip found a tiny brass key beneath a fluffy rug while hunting for a lost sock. The key twinkled like a little star and hummed very softly when Pip cupped it. Outside, the old willow tree wiggled its branches in the wind, and tucked into its roots, Pip noticed a tiny round door stitched into the bark. The door had a moon-shaped knob the perfect size for the key. Pip felt a flutter of excitement and tiptoed closer, listening for any secret sounds. Pip turned the little brass key in the moon knob, and the round door sighed open like a whisper. Warm, honey-colored light spilled out, and a tiny spiral stair slipped down into the tree. Pip took a tiny breath and crawled inside. The secret library was snug and bright, with shelves made of carved twigs and spell books that shimmered and hummed. Twinkle lanterns floated like friendly fireflies, and a small mouse in a red scarf popped out to say hello with a cheerful squeak. A soft shadow fluttered and a warm voice said, "Welcome." Luna the owl blinked gentle eyes and adjusted small spectacles. She was the librarian of the secret library, and she had a laugh like a small bell. Luna showed Pip how each book held a tiny kind spell, one to make flowers hum, another to sew a torn mitten, and one that made bedtime stars twinkle brighter. Milo scurried to a low shelf, pointing with his tiny paw at a book that giggled when touched. Pip opened a small book that whispered like wind through leaves. The pages smelled faintly of cookies and rain. Words fluttered across the paper in friendly shapes, and the book offered a giggle spell that promised to make a sad friend smile. Pip learned how to say the soft-sounding words and to sprinkle a tiny pinch of tickle dust from the page. Milo clapped little paws, and Pip felt a brave, warm fizz in the belly, ready to try gentle magic for the first time. The first spell was for a snail who had lost his smile. Pip whispered the words, sprinkled a teeny pinch of tickle dust, and the snail's antennae wiggled. Then it smiled a shy curl. Nearby, a worried tulip unfurled because a leaf-binding spell made it feel safe and snug. Little gentle miracles happened one by one. A toy mended its seam, a puff of warm air found a chilly kitten, and the library hummed with happy, tiny magic that stitched small things back together. A sudden boom of thunder made the willow shiver and the library's lanterns sway. A big gust rattled a high shelf and one important book slid and tumbled the map of giggles. It fluttered out the little tree door and into the windy world beyond. Pip's heart thumped like a drum. "We can find it," Milo piped up. "Let's follow the giggles," Luna hooted. Pip's legs felt light and brave. Together, they dashed out into the windy night to chase the laughing map with giggles sparkling all around them. Outside the willow, the world smelled of rain and the map was hopping across puddles, leaving tiny laughing footprints. Pip followed closely, careful on slippery stones, while Milo darted under umbrellas and Luna flew low, guiding with soft calls. Pip remembered a gentle lullaby spell and hummed small notes like a ribbon. The map paused, listened, and the laughter softened into a little giggle. Pip reached out, picked it up, and tucked it under an arm. They hurried back before the storm could be too loud. Back in the tree, Pip placed the map of giggles on the table and Luna smiled wide. The library sighed a happy puff and the lanterns sang a soft lullaby. "You were brave and kind," Luna said, and the books rustled like a standing ovation. She pressed a feather-soft stamp into Pip's palm, a tiny mark that would let Pip return when needed. The brass key hummed warmly and slipped like a sleepy star back into Pip's pocket. The secret library tucked itself up like a bedtime story. That night, Pip walked home through wet grass with Milo on a little shoulder, and the brass key warm in a pocket. At bedtime, Pip tucked the map and the key under a special shelf, whispering goodnight to the library that lived in a tree. Pip slept with a smile, dreaming of gentle spells and new friends. The willow hummed softly in the dark, and the secret library waited, always ready for one more kind adventure when a small, brave heart needed it. The Little Witch's First Spell. Leela the Little Witch lived in a cozy, crooked cottage at the top of a friendly hill. Her hat was a little patchwork of purple and soft blue, and her braid stuck out like a question mark because she had been thinking all afternoon. Tonight the moon looked like a warm pancake in the sky, and Leela sat at her tiny round table with Pip the cat purring on her lap. She had a spell book, a small velvet pouch of star dust, and a tiny broom that wobbled when it laughed. Leela had never cast a spell before. Her heart felt like a little drum. She was ready to try. Pip blinked his golden eyes and nudged the tiny velvety pouch toward Leela. The pouch made a soft giggle like a sleepy bell, and a sprinkle of tiny sparkles tickled Leela's fingers. She opened the spell book. The pages hummed and flicked like a friendly bird. Words looked like little ribbons, and there was a song rhyme that promised gentle light and a dancing lantern if you blew softly and meant kind things. Leela practiced the rhyme under her breath, tasting the gentle sounds like candy. Pip purred encouragement, and the broom gave a tiny twitch. Outside, the moon watched with a buttery smile while the little hedgehog snuffled at the doorstep, curious. Leela practiced blowing on a single sparkle, whispering the rhyme the book suggested. Her voice was gentle and funny sweet. The broomstick leaned closer as if to listen. Nothing big happened at first, only a tiny shiver of light and a soft giggle from the pouch, but Leela felt proud. Being small and careful felt like a kind of magic too. Pip danced his paws on the table, impatient for the sparkles to do something more. On her third try, Leela took a deep breath, tipped the little pouch, and let a whispering handful of star dust float out. The sparkles hopped like tiny frogs and caught the rhyme in the air. The spell book hummed louder, and one brave sparkle zipped to the broom tassels and made them tingle. Pip meowed with delight, and the broom gave a surprised little sneeze of dust. A tiny paper lantern on the shelf trembled, then lifted a whisker and floated up like it had been waiting for a friend. Leela clapped, surprised and delighted. The little lantern bobbed and hummed, glowing warm and orange like a friendly firefly. It brushed the moonlight and left tiny glittery footprints in the air. Leela laughed because it sounded like a tiny bell, and Pip chased a floating sparkle that looped like a ribbon. The hedgehog watched with wide eyes and a brave snuffle, thinking maybe this was the best evening for a snack and a spectacle. Leela whispered new parts of the rhyme, trying to guide the lantern gently. The cottage filled with gentle light and hopeful sounds. Emboldened, Leela tried a bigger breath and a kinder line from the book. The lantern listened like a puppy, and two more papers on the shelf rose to join the dance, twirling above the table. The broom laughed so hard it nearly toppled, and Pip spun a little somersault on the tablecloth. Leela's voice grew steady as she counted the rhyme like a little song, soft, strong, and gentle. Every word made the lanterns sway in a kindly parade. Tonight the cottage looked like a tiny festival lit by Leela's careful magic. The moon seemed to clap with twinkling light. Even the trees hummed a soft tune. Leela felt like she could make gentleness float across the whole hill. Pip pranced in circles, and the broom did a silly little waltz. The lanterns drifted over the window and out toward the willow tree, painting long shadows like friendly fingers. Leela felt proud and a little dizzy with excitement as the magic she had read about became real right before her eyes. Her spell sounded like a lullaby the whole valley could hear. But one lantern, cheekier than the rest, decided to explore the willow branches too closely. It tumbled into the leaves and got tangled in a cozy knot, humming in a worried little voice. Leela's stomach did a tiny flip. The rhyme she knew was gentle, but now something needed bravery and thought. The moon watched, its smile turned curious, and Pip hissed a small, hurried hiss as if to say, "We must help." The hedgehog snuffled forward, suddenly very brave and very ready to help a floating friend. Leela took another deep breath, this one steadier, with kindness tucked into it like a secret. She opened the book to a different page and read a softer rhyme about patience and help. The words were slow and round, like warm soup. Pip rubbed against the lantern's ribbon, trying to soothe it, while the hedgehog gave a polite little snuffle that somehow untangled a ribbon knot. The broom leaned its handle down to offer a steady perch. Leela felt braver with friends by her side and kept whispering the new, careful rhyme. Slowly, the lantern stopped trembling, and its little hum turned into a thankful trill. Leela said the rhyme again, softer and steadier, and the lantern floated free with a tiny bow as if to say thank you. The willow leaves tapped like applause, and the moon gave a big buttery grin. Leela hugged Pip and the hedgehog, cheeks warm and proud. The cottage glowed with gentle lantern music, and Leela realized that magic could tidy mistakes when you used your words and your heart together. Everyone sighed happy and tired sighs. After the rescue, Leela sat very still and wrote a tiny note in the back of her spell book. "Be patient, be kind, breathe slow." She tied a little star sticker beside it and kept the pouch of star dust closed for a gentle nap. Pip curled into a sleepy bun on the broom's crooked handle, and the hedgehog found a warm sock for a nest. Leela smiled because she had learned a new kind of magic, fixing things with friends, calm words, and a steady breath. It felt like the best kind of spell. Night hummed all around the cottage like a sleepy tune. Leela made a tiny pot of moon tea, sweet and warm, and shared it with her friends on the doorstep. They sipped quietly under the smiling moon, which seemed to puff little stars like popcorn. Pip told a silent story with his tail, and the hedgehog snuffled a happy snack. Leela felt proud and cozy. Her first spell turned out to be a lesson wrapped in giggles and small heroic acts. The hill felt safer than before, full of gentle light and tiny promises. Before bed, Leela tucked the spell book under her pillow and hummed the rhyme she had learned, the one about kindness and breath. Her hat slid over one eye like a sleepy curtain. The broom leaned gently by the window, and Pip gave one last stretch and a purr like a tiny engine. Outside, lanterns bobbed like sleepy friends returning to rest. Leela swallowed a yawn and felt a brave kind of tired, the sort that grows after you try something big and do your best. She whispered, "Tomorrow I will try more," and the moon winked back. Leela dreamed of new gentle spells, one to help lost mittens find their owners, another to make soup sing when someone is sad. Pip chased dream sparkles shaped like fish, and the hedgehog dreamed of brave leaf boats. In the morning, Leela opened the spell book again and found tiny footprints of sparkles near the note she had left. The book hummed as if to say, "You did well." Leela grinned and tucked a star sticker onto the page. Practice, she thought, and gentle courage were the best kinds of magic. Word of the little lantern parade spread softly through the valley like warm bread smell. Neighbors waved from downstairs windows and left tiny thank you notes on Leela's gate. The moon stayed, always friendly, and at night more lanterns sometimes drifted by just to say hello. Leela practiced her rhymes a little every day, and sometimes she made tiny lights for someone who felt lonely. Magic, she learned, was not only in sparkles, but in the courage to try and in the care to fix what went wrong with gentle hands. On the hill, the cottage glowed softer each night, a little beacon of practice and patience. Children of the valley told stories of the small witch who tried her first spell and learned how to be brave when things wobbled. Leela liked the stories because they sounded like the rhyme she read, calm, bright, and full of room for mistakes that turned into lessons. Pip would puff with pride, and the broom would wobble happily at every retelling. The hedgehog became a favorite helper and got a name, Nuzzle, because of the way he liked to nuzzle trouble into neatness. Years later, Leela would remember her first spell with a silly, fond whisper. She would write the rhyme at the front of the book so she never forgot how a gentle voice and a steady breath could calm a floating thing. But tonight, she was only just learning, and that was perfect. She kissed Pip on his head, patted Nuzzle's brave snout, and turned the little pouch so it could rest and giggle softly in its sleep. The moon tucked the whole hill beneath a cozy blanket of stars, and Leela's first spell slept, too soft, mended, and waiting for tomorrow. The magical school bus ride. It was a bright morning with giggles in the air. Miss Luna stood by the gate, humming a gentle tune that made the leaves sway like tiny hands. The playground buzzed when a golden hum grew louder and the magical school bus rolled up on tiny wings. Its grill smiled like a friendly face and its windows winked. Mia clutched her sparkly red backpack, Ben straightened his button hat, and Kiko, the little green frog, hopped 3 excited hops. The bus door opened with a puff of warm cinnamon air, inviting everyone inside. Inside, the bus smelled like warm toast and starlight. The seats were soft and plump like marshmallows, and the windows stretched to show a sky that seemed to be waiting. Miss Luna gave each child a tiny rainbow ticket that shimmered when they touched it. The bus rumbled, then tickled, then popped, as if it couldn't hold in its excitement. A gentle bell rang, and the starlight whistle gleamed on Miss Luna's pocket. Mia peeked at her rainbow ticket, and it winked back with colors that giggled. The sparkle map lay on the front seat and unfurled like a sleepy cat. It glowed soft turquoise, then pink, and whispered tiny notes when someone hummed. Ben leaned closer, his tin telescope dangling from its strap, and the map folded a corner toward a root-marked cloud garden. Miss Luna smiled and said, "Hold hands if you'd like to explore. The bus will listen to quiet wishes." So they held hands, warm and small, and the bus hummed a tune like a lullaby, lifting gently above the rooftops. Up, up they floated past rooftops, past park swings, and over the sleepy bakery where crumbs smelled like stories. The city beneath looked like a toy set. Little cars tooted politely and trees waved their leafy arms. Outside the window, a flock of paper birds unfolded into real birds and tipped tiny hats. The magical school bus whispered, "Watch the sky," and clouds began to gather like cotton castles. Kiko clapped his tiny frog hands while Mia pointed, eyes wide with the kind of wonder that made the world feel new again. They reached the cloud garden, where clouds bloomed like flowers and dripped silver petals that tasted faintly of lemonade. Little cloud rabbits bounced along paths of fluff, and tiny rainbows hummed like tuneful bees. The sparkle map shimmered and drew a glowing line to a pulsing, pearly gate. "Let's be gentle," Miss Luna whispered. "Clouds are soft and sleepy." Ben touched a cloud petal, and it sang a tiny note. The children giggled as starlight fell like sprinkles, and the bus settled on a fluffy path made just for them. As they wandered, a soft sound hummed from deep in the garden, a low, whale-like song that made the clouds sway. A gentle star whale rose from a cloud pool, scales shimmering like sequins and blinked slow, kind eyes. It misted tiny stars that smelled like cookies and safety. The star whale had a small bell tangled in its fin, and it seemed sad because the bell could not ring. "Maybe it needs a friend to learn the right note," Miss Luna said. The children felt a little flutter of helpfulness in their chests. The sparkle map flashed a blue melodious line, and the starlight whistle twinkled with hopeful light. Ben took out his tin telescope like a careful tool. Mia hummed a tiny tune from her rainbow ticket, and Kiko croaked 3 small notes just to try. The map brightened as they sang together, Mia's tune, Ben's careful counting, Kiko's funny croak, until the bell on the whale jingled a soft, happy chime. The whale shimmered with delight, and the whole garden echoed with a gentle ringing like distant laughter. Suddenly, a fluttering of tiny silver leaves swirled around the bus, and the sparkle map blinked one color too many. A little gust had blown a page free, a tiny map corner that held the way home. "Oh," breathed Mia, and they all looked where the page danced toward the melting sun. Miss Luna whispered, "We can follow our hearts when maps wiggle, but let's be clever and patient." They tied a string to the bus bumper and to a cloud hook so the drifting map page would not float too far away. The bus hummed a slow-thinking song and took a gentle curve toward a tiny planet hanging low in the sky, Puddle Planet, where the lost things like to drift. They landed softly on a mirror pond and tiptoed across stepping stones that giggled underfoot. Little puddlefish lifted the map page on their fins and handed it back with a bow. "Thank you," said Ben, clapping. The children learned how sometimes you must go a new way to find a familiar thing. The bus honored the lesson with a proud, purring rumble. With the map whole again, the route home shimmered like a ribbon of moonlight. The bus opened its wings wide, and the sky felt gentle, like a breath. Along the way, they passed a parade of firefly lanterns that bobbed in time to Miss Luna's humming. Each child closed their eyes for a moment and made a tiny wish, one for a friend, one for a new song, one for a cozy nap. The bus gathered those wishes like warm mittens and tucked them into its heart so they would glow forever. As the sun began to yawn, little yawns spread through the bus like soft ripples. The cloud blanket floated down from a shelf and wrapped itself gently around sleepy knees and frog toes. Miss Luna told a slow, shining story about small stars who like to hide in cups of tea, and the children listened with half-closed eyes. The bus folded its wings like a parent tucking in a quilt, and the city below hummed its bedtime tune. Their school gate came into view like the smile of a waiting friend. They stepped out with sleepy laughter and a pocket full of tiny wonders. A starlight ring that tickled Ben's finger, a sprinkle of cloud dust that made Mia's hair smell like lemon cake, and a promise from Kiko that he'd teach everyone a frog hop dance. The bus leaned in for a last friendly nuzzle, its grill smiling a slow goodnight. Miss Luna tucked the sparkle map away and said, Remember, magic grows when you share it. The children waved their rainbow tickets with sleepy hands, each ticket winking good night. At home, under blankets and moonbeams, each child dreamed gentle dreams of cloud gardens and singing whales. In their rooms, the sparkle map kept one tiny glow over their pillows like a nightlight, and the rainbow ticket rested on the bedside table ready for another day. Miss Luna hummed as she walked home, her little whistle chiming about tomorrow's plans. Outside, the magical school bus folded its wings and folded its smile, happy and ready to sleep until the next morning called it out to play. If you listen closely on a quiet morning, you might hear a tiny bell and a whisper of wings, proof that the magical school bus still remembers the names of friends and the songs they sang. Some days it will stop just outside the gate, waiting with cinnamon-scented breath, ready for new hands to hold and new wishes to tuck inside its heart. Miss Luna will be there, humming a tune that makes the leaves clap, and Kiko will leap high and say, "Are you ready?" The world will answer with a bright yes. The Dolphin Who Saved a Whale. Dolly the dolphin loved the warm sea. She zipped and zoomed under shiny waves, leaping high and singing little bubbly songs. Her skin glimmered like blue glass. One day, while chasing a band of tiny silver fish, Dolly heard a different sound, a long, slow, humming song that sounded a little sad. The sound made the bubbles around her tremble. Dolly stopped mid-leap and listened, her ears twitching. She decided to follow the sound, nibbling a piece of sugar-bright sunlight as she swam slowly toward the deep blue hush. The sad song grew louder and softer, like a tide. Dolly dove down past waving seaweed until she found Willa the whale. Willa lay very still, tangled in silvery net loops that tugged at her wide tail. Her big eyes blinked slowly. "Hello," Dolly called, tiny voice echoing beside a giant ear. Willa made a soft, low sound, and a little bubble rose like a brave balloon. Dolly nudged the net with a worried nose. Willa tried to lift one fin, but the ropes held tight. Dolly's heart thumped with a brave squeeze. Dolly pulled and pushed, but the net did not loosen. "I can't do it alone," she said, puffing out small puffs of air. She tried singing back to Willa, a quick, cheerful tune to keep hope bright. Willa answered with a soft whoosh that sounded like a sleepy bell. Dolly called out, "Hold on, Willa, I will find help." Then she zipped away, faster than a spark, darting through the coral lanes and whispering to the fishes as she sped by. Each friend she met looked up with big, listening eyes. Dolly swam to the colorful coral reef where Crispin the crab clicked his claws and Tilly the turtle grazed on sea lettuce. Sammy the seahorse bobbed like a tiny golden flag. "Willa is trapped," Dolly sang as she arrived. Crispin clicked his claws thoughtfully. Tilly blinked slowly and smiled with steady calm. Sammy curled his tail and offered a coil of seaweed rope. The friends gathered close, heads and shells and tails together, whispering ideas like a tide of tiny plans. They wanted to help. They wanted to try everything. Crispin clicked, snipping tiny bits of the net with his strong pincers where the knots looked weak. Tilly pushed with her broad flippers, steady as a slow drum. Sammy tied a soft seaweed band to loop around a heavy part of the net so they could pull carefully. Dolly practiced a gentle nudge that would wake Willa without startling her. The glowing starfish lantern shone a warm light into dark net holes, and the sparkly seashell whistle sat ready. Each friend had a small job, and their tiny hearts felt big. When they reached Willa, the net looked bigger and twistier than they had guessed. The rope had loops and a rusty anchor that dug into the sand. Dolly spoke softly so Willa would not worry. "We will pull and we will be careful," she said. Crispin found a place to nip where the threads were old. Tilly pushed from below to lift Willa's tail a little. Sammy tugged with the seaweed band while Dolly sang a strong, steady song. Little by little, the knots loosened like a sleepy snail waking up. But then a knot held tight like a stubborn rock. When Crispin tried to snip it, the thread snapped in a surprising way and a sharp tug startled Willa, who made a loud, shaky huff. The anchor had caught under a stone and would not budge. For a breath, everyone paused. Little bubbles trembled between them. Dolly's whiskers quivered, but she breathed deep, filling her chest with ocean air and thinking of ideas like shining shells. The friends blinked and listened. This was a tricky turn, but not the end. Dolly remembered the sparkly seashell whistle that hung on a coral hook. It could call helpers from far away. She tucked it under her fin and blew a soft, twinkling note that rolled over the waves like a rolling bell. The sound curled and curled until more dolphins arrived, their sleek backs popping like waves. A big, kind humpback named Grandpa Hump heard, too, and came slowly, his old eyes shining. "We will pull together," sang the dolphins, and their voices made little lights in the water. With extra flippers and tails, they all worked as a gentle, strong tide. Grandpa Hump shifted his weight and pushed the anchor free from the rock with a slow, powerful nudge. The dolphins wrapped seaweed ropes and pulled with rhythm. Pull, pull, breathe. Pull, pull, breathe. Crispin made careful snips, and the starfish lantern lit the darkest loops. Willa's big tail wagged a little, then more and more, until finally the last knot slipped open like a sleepy eye. The net floated away, torn and harmless. Willa rose slowly, breaking the surface with a soft, whooshing laugh that made water sparkle. She gave Dolly a gentle nudge that felt like a thank you hug. All the sea friends danced in the water, doing little flips, spins, and clacky crab clicks. The little fish made a glittering parade, and the coral waved like an audience. Willa sang a new song, full and warm, and everyone sang back. It sounded like sunshine inside the sea, and it made Dolly's heart blossom like a bright coral bloom. After the rescue, the ocean felt kinder. Willa wrapped a cave of her fin around the little friends for a slow, warm swim. "Thank you," she hummed deeply, and her song wove into a promise. She would watch out for nets and help any friend who needed a hand or fin. Dolly felt sleepy and proud. The sparkly seashell whistle tucked into a pocket of coral seemed to wink. The sea friends promised to teach others about gentle nets and to help untangle anything they could find. There was a big bubble party that evening. Tiny bubbles floated like lanterns, and the glowing starfish lantern lit a soft path across the reef. Dolly chased a shimmering bubble and popped it with a happy squeak. Crispin clicked a cheerful tune, and Tilly told a slow, funny story that made everyone giggle. The ocean hummed with friendship and gentle lessons. They made a tiny flag with seaweed that read, "Be kind, watch the waves," and the flag twirled in a slow, smiling swirl. Before long, the sun slid down into a flaming, sleepy puddle, and Dolly curled beside Willa's warm side under a sky of moonlight on the sea. "We helped one another today," Willa sang, and Dolly nodded, eyes heavy. The reef hummed a lullaby, and each friend snuggled into their own little nook. The ocean held them like a soft blanket. Dolly dreamed of new adventures, but she also dreamed of small kindnesses that make big waves. The last thing she felt was a cozy, happy glow. In the morning, Dolly hopped up with a bright, bubbly whistle. The sea sparkled with new stories to tell. She waved to the boats passing far away and watched carefully for nets that might float too close. Whenever she saw something worrying, she would call "Team," and helpers would come. Dolly had learned that being small did not mean being helpless. A brave heart and good friends could change a whole ocean. And every time she passed Willa, they shared a secret, sleepy smile, remembering the day they saved each other.